This is Paul Page at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the third day of time trials. Now, when this day began, there were 7 positions waiting to be filled for the Indy 500. 4 have now qualified. Hiro Matsushita into the outside of the 9th row, Crawford, Briard, and Eddie Cheever in the 10th row. There are 3 positions left in the field of 33 for race day. Now, each month of May at the Speedway has its moments, and this month has been no exception. The qualifying for the 77th running of the Indianapolis 500 began a week ago today. 4 laps are complete for Mario Andretti. And for the moment, at least, he is the pole sitter. The speed on the first lap, 2:15.254. That's an 8-mile-an-hour drop for Mario Andretti's 4-lap average.
You waved that lap off, you weren't happy, but you still feel you have a shot at the pole.
Well, we're trying to look for that, so we canceled this one. The car was pushing so bad I couldn't even make the corner.
Averaging 222.379 miles an hour, and that puts him in the middle of the front row, right alongside of the provisional pole sitter, Mario Andretti.
And the green flag is out, and he's out.
The front row is set for the 77th running of the Indianapolis 500. On the outside of row 1, the Brazilian, Raul Boesel. Flanking him in the middle of the front row, the 1969 winner of this great race, Mario Andretti. And winning his first ever pole position in IndyCar competition, the Dutchman from Holland, Arie Luyendyk, winner here in 1990.
There for a second.
And coming off the corner, the back end let go this time. It just spun so fast on me.
So now on the track, ready to qualify, one of the most heralded rookies to come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in recent years, Nigel Mansell, the reigning World Formula One champion and the current leader in the PPG IndyCar World Series.
Now up to 2-1.
His qualifying effort is only good enough for the middle of row number 3. Nigel Mansell may have come here with World Championship driving credentials, but he's just another rookie here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
After working diligently through the years to build his racing team into respectability, Dale Coyne came to Indianapolis this month of May with 5 race cars, 3 drivers, and great expectations. But after 2 weeks of practice, he's now down to just 2 cars, 3 banged-up drivers, and barely a thread of hope of making the race.
And here he is, A.J. White.
You shock us all this morning.
Well, thank you. It's a hard decision, but it comes a time. I don't.
There were few dry eyes in the Speedway at that moment. A.J. Foyt, who won his first of 4 races in 1961, now will be a full-time car owner taking care of younger and newer drivers. We'll have coverage as practice continues here today of the time trials tomorrow, and then a week from tomorrow, the Indianapolis 500-mile race itself. We'll be back with more of the best of wide world of sports after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
Men who test the limits of speed are a mystery to the average person. Why do they do it? Why risk death on a regular basis? Why endure painful injuries? And suffer the loss of departed friends? Why not choose a different sport with a less final result for one small mistake? We have wandered along with you and have tried to explore the psyches of those men who push the limits. They have come from every continent and every sort of background. Your number one choice from our list of 10 is a tough Texan named A.J. Foyt. He was born in the heart of Texas in 1935 and started to race while still a youngster. We saw him win his first Indy 500 in 1961 and were there when he won his record fourth in 1977. We watched him win on dirt tracks and the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1967. And we were there in 1972 when he became the first and only driver to win Indy, Le Mans, and the Daytona 500. AJ's career appeared to come to an end in September 1990 when he suffered serious injuries. The front of his car was ripped away in a high-speed crash. But he endured the pain of rehabilitation because the roar of the crowd at Indy is like food and drink to AJ. It has sustained him in a 5-decade career. Foyt's most dramatic victory at Indianapolis came in 1967. For the first time in history, the 500 was postponed for a day because of rain. And as the 33 drivers prepared for the start, pent-up tension was everywhere. On that day, experience would be served.
Start your engine!
The field moving off now, the mechanics off the track, falling in line behind the pace car. Soon this race will be underway.
On that unprecedented second day start, Parnelli Jones in his revolutionary new jet turbine car took the lead as he had done the day before. That was the start, but the finish would be different.
We continue to see the dawn of a new era here in Indianapolis as the turbine-powered car, driven by Parnelli Jones, moves out to a most comfortable lead over the rest of the field. Powerful, almost completely silent, this really captured the fancy of almost 250,000 people gathered here. Second place right now is Dan Gurney, and there's A.J. Foyt in third position. The 1967 Indianapolis 500 will soon be history. We're in the closing laps now, and Parnelli Jones has opened up a tremendous lead over second place A.J. Foyt. There you see it, Parnelli 53 seconds ahead. That turbine car breezing along with the breeze. Save fuel. Now adhere to Foyt, Jones may pit. Now, what could those mean?
Well, actually, it's possible they are somewhat concerned about the amount of fuel he has. However, they don't look concerned. I suspect they want him just to slow down a little bit, take it easy, and save that automobile.
Looked like the Granatelli brothers were combing their hair for victory lane there. That was A.J. Foyt going by, and Parnelli very close to him, almost lapping him. The crowd now just waiting for victory lane and all that goes with it. Let's see, Parnelli must be taking that save fuel sign seriously. He was a lot closer.
He ought to be coming by.
Parnelli Jones with this. Roger, I think something's wrong. Something has happened. Something has happened to the lead car. I don't know what it can be. Something's happened. Here he is.
Parnelli Jones is coasting. Coming around the number 4 turn.
It's possible he could be out of fuel.
High confusion in the Granatelli pit. They didn't know whether to run or stay.
Certainly something you wouldn't have suspected.
A.J. Foyt just went past and saw it, and there he is, waving to his pit crew. Unbelievable chaos here. It looks like A.J. Foyt, and we better start talking about him, is going to be the winner here. All he has to do is negotiate each of these 4 turns one more time, and it's all over. A.J. Foyt will win his third Indianapolis 500, a great comeback after last year's disappointing season for him.
Well, he drove a great race. He just stayed in there all day long, grit his teeth, and there's an accident in the front straightaway.
There's 2, 3, 4 cars. Where's Foyt? I don't know whether he can get through or not.
Hitting the wall, bouncing back across the straightaway.
Foyt's only got a couple hundred yards to go, but where is he? There he is.
He's done the throw.
A.J. Foyt will win
win the Indianapolis 500 in an incredible, thrilling finish.
Yes, A.J. had become the first driver to win the world's greatest race 4 times. Last week, at age 58, 32 years after we first saw him in the first month of ABC's Wide World of Sports, A.J. Foyt took the final lap at Indy. There was no race, no trophy, just a fond farewell. A.J. Foyt had retired. So, A.J., retired just about a week now, and you have been voted #1. It's all kind of appropriate that it all comes together. What's your reaction?
Well, it's an awful big honor to be voted #1, and naturally I'm happy the fans saw it that way, because I've tried to give the fans back 110% all the years I raced, and the fans is what's made A.J. Foyt.
You did it that day in 1967. What do you remember about that crash from the final lap?
Well, the final lap, I felt like I had the race won when I come off of 4 and this big wall of smoke and cars going everywhere. I put the brakes on hard as I possibly could without getting in trouble, and then I dropped it in second gear and kind of wiggled my way through, and I just couldn't believe when I saw the checkered flag. It was just like a dream come true.
It's all finally come to an end on the race course for you. What will you miss the most?
Most thing I'm going to miss is the fans, because the fans is what made A.J. Foyt.
You've always made that very clear, and now you know exactly what they think about you. Congratulations again. And Frank, it's been a long, long journey, hasn't it, since we first came to Indy 32 years ago? The journey continues.
Well, Jim, over those 32 years, what was it about A.J., Ollie, Evil, and the others that makes our memories of him so enduring? True, their accomplishments are beyond compare. But then again, we have always wanted you viewers to come to know these champions, to bring you the human drama of their remarkable achievements, for you to be able to feel the vitality, their charm, and their inner drive to succeed that has entertained, amazed, and inspired us all. Jim and I have really enjoyed reliving these memories. We hope you have too, and we look forward to more memorable moments to come.
The Borg Warner Trophy, grand prize in the world's greatest race, the Indy 500. Since 1911 through 77 seasons, excluding the war era, great drivers and mechanical masterminds have pooled their efforts in pursuit of 500 victory. But to win the big prize, you've got to make the big show. Disappointment and disaster loom in every turn in the quest to qualify. To overcome all that, to make the field, is to join the elite of world motorsports, to be an Indy 500 driver, and have a shot at the biggest prize of all. Since we left you last Sunday, Stephane Gregoire has become a household name here in Circle City, fastest rookie in the field at over 220 miles an hour. For those not yet qualified, rain early in the week was the enemy, washing clean that fabled yard of bricks at start-finish, postponing the search for speed. Car owner Dale Coyne might have wished it was raining midday on Wednesday. Instead of a shower, he got a downpour of bad luck. First, Eric Bachelard went into the wall hard, totaling the Marmon Wasp, namesake of the first car ever to win the Indy 500. And less than a half hour later, the hard luck driver of the month, Robbie Buell, was into the wall for the second time. That ends Buell's hopes of making the 500 field, the team painfully short on equipment. With the retirement of A.J. Foyt, the hopes of the old guard ride with Mario Andretti. Ride, in fact, at 227 miles an hour. Fastest lap of the month, turned here on Friday. And Mario's nephew, John, has been a busy little elf. Here he is in one of A.J. Foyt's cars, the third machine he's shaken down so far, but he still doesn't have a ride. Expect young John to be very much a part of the show here on the second weekend of qualifying. And finally, hard luck for Dominic Dobson, who didn't get on the track until Wednesday and found the new layout a bit difficult to figure out. He'll join the dozen hopefuls who'll try to make the big show in this, the second weekend of qualifying for the 77th Indianapolis 500. come to you from Indianapolis, Indiana, the city whose name is synonymous with speed. And in the month of May, this giant 2.5 mile oval looms not only as a monument to motorsports, but today as a very special challenge for those not yet qualified for the Indy 500. Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Despain with Derek Daly. 3 hours remain today in the third day of qualifying for the 500, and one word can sum up those 3 hours. That word is pressure. Some very big names are not yet in the show, the likes of Willie Ribbs, for example, and Robbie Gordon in A.J. Foyt's car. And we have yet to see Davy Jones make the show or his fellow IMSA star, Jeff Brabham. They have 3 hours today to make it, but a big question mark tomorrow in that there is rain forecast for this track. Today may well tell the whole story, Derek.
That's right. The most amazing thing is some of the names that are in the race that may be in jeopardy of being bumped out. Can you imagine the national champion, Bobby Rahal? He is in jeopardy at the moment because the speed he has done is not quite fast enough. Eddie Cheever may be bumped out. Scott Pruitt could be in trouble, and Mark Smith is in the most precarious position of all. You know, full-season sponsorships are sold by these teams on the premise that they will be a participant in the biggest race in the world, the Indy 500. Well, if you come here for 2 weeks and you do not extract enough speed from your car, no amount of excuses or hard-luck stories ever eases the pain of not qualifying for this great race.
We came here with 7 spots available. 4 of those were gobbled up early today when it was cool. The track has just opened for practice. Things will get really wild at happy hour, the last hour of the day. We're here to cover it all live from the Brickyard. .500 time trials brought to you by Budweiser. Fresh, pure, natural. Proud to be your Bud. Emerson Fittipaldi is on the raceway. He of the Penske team coming here for the 25th time, but shut out of the front 2 rows for the first time in that long 25-year history for the premier team, perhaps in this series, at least historically speaking. Let's first update you on how the qualifying went last weekend. Arie Luyendyk, the popular Dutchman, taking the pole at 2:23. Mario Andretti, after so many years of attempting to win the 500 and winning it only once, put himself in the middle of the front row. Sat on the pole for some 5 hours before Luyendyk bumped him off at happy hour. And Raoul Boesel takes the outside of row 1, making it a great weekend for Dick Simon's team.
Moving back to row 2, Scott Goodyear became a national hero in Canada last year when he almost won the Indianapolis 500. The man that beat him is beside him on row 2, Al Unser Jr. Would have been happy with anywhere in the top 3 rows. And Stefan Johansson, he said his qualifying run here was the most emotional time he has ever had in racing.
Back in row 3, we find those Penske cars of young Paul Tracy, the emerging Canadian star, the winner at Long Beach, and Emerson Fittipaldi, former winner of the 500. And there in the middle, the much-talked-about Nigel Mansell, the reigning Formula One champion, who has come here for his first crack at the Indy 500 and has been a big story all month.
Moving back to row 4, Roberto Guerrero, still the track record holder here from last year at 232 miles an hour. Now he's again with Kenny Bernstein. Scott Brayton, longtime Buick man here, now he's with Ford. And on the outside, Danny Sullivan with Rick Allis's car.
Orthopedics Indianapolis and Dr. Terry Trammell might well sponsor row 5. Nelson Piquet, the 3-time world champ with the horrible wall-smashing accident here last year, through his recuperation and back. Kevin Cogan injured so badly here 2 years ago that he missed last year's race. He too has returned, and Pruitt, who also has that IndyCar shuffle outside.
Row 6, Stefan Gregoire knew nothing about oval tracks or Indianapolis or Indy cars and comes here as the fastest rookie. Jeff Andretti, another recovering driver, is in the middle, and Teo Fabi, who struggled for a long time and eventually found the required speed.
2 veterans and a youngster in row 7, Gary Bettenhausen on the inside, Jimmy Vasser in the middle, and Stan Fox, who didn't run very many practice laps but said, I'm fine, I can put it in the show, and did at 218 miles an hour.
Row 8, Lynn St. James, last year's Rookie of the Year here at the Speedway. Tony Bettenhausen delighted to put his second car in the show, And Al Unser, another man who struggled before eventually finding a 2:17.4.
The last two qualifiers of last weekend, Ray Hall, as we said, vulnerable perhaps at 2:17, and the first driver named Smith to ever make the show here in 77 years, Mark Smith, hoping to hang on. Today's qualifiers, Hiro Matsushita, who rounds out the 9th row and was the first man today to take a spot. Jim Crawford, Olivier Grouillard, and Eddie Cheever will make up row 10, and that means there are 3 starting spots still available before the bumping process begins. One of the biggest stories of this month has been the retirement of A.J. Foyt, former driver, now full-time car owner, standing by with our Dr. Jerry Punch.
Thank you very much, Dave. We are with the winningest driver in the history of the IndyCar Series, A.J. Foyt. And A.J., before we talk about last week for a moment, today, you've got a garage full of race cars and 2 pretty anxious race drivers. Now, what's the strategy for getting these 2 guys in the field?
Well, actually, you know, after everything happened last week and we had some problems, and then I pulled my deal of quitting, and we just worked with John Andretti and Robbie Gordon, and we're waiting for the wind to die down, cool off a little bit. We'll run speeds 218, 219 this morning, but we're just waiting for the weather, and we're changing some gear ratios, maybe turn the RPMs a little bit more.
Now, last Saturday, there wasn't a dry eye in the house when you got on the track, ran a lap, and waved goodbye. Have you thought about what you did? Any second thoughts now that people are wondering if we're going to be able to get a full field here with the way the weather's been?
Well, naturally, we'll have a full field, but I don't know. I think you doctors drugged me because I don't remember saying all that, but I guess it happened. But no, I've had some wonderful days, and I always said whenever I got that feeling, I would just walk away, and I guess all of a sudden, even though we was running quite fast, that I said, I'm through, and that was it. I couldn't concentrate on with the crew and still drive a race car.
But from all the fans around the world, what a wonderful memory for us to be able to remember A.J. Foyt, to go out a winner, a 4-time Indy champion, a 7-time national champion, all the victories. What a way to say goodbye. And I know millions of fans around the country haven't had an opportunity, but for them, thank you for giving us one last chance.
I appreciate that, and I thank my fans that stayed loyal with me through my years, and I still love you, and I'll always love you.
Always a champion. A.J., thank you very much, and we'll see you out on the grid a little bit later on as his 2 cars are getting ready behind me with John Andretti and Robbie Gordon aboard to get their qualifying runs. Let's check it out on the grid where Jan Beekes is standing by. Jan?
Well, thank you, Jerry. We have a weather forecast for tomorrow that could mean 80% chance of showers, meaning we could have less than 3 hours to see which cars make the greatest spectacle in racing. We have no one out on the racetrack right now actually doing a qualifying attempt. A little bit of practice going on. Why are they waiting till the last minute like A.J. Foyt just talked about? Well, behind me is one of the new innovations this year, which is a 300-gallon fuel tank that now can fuel the cars right here in pit lane. It was last year and all the previous years you'd have to tow an Indy car back through Gasoline Alley, all the way back through, before you could present it at the line. Well, the second thing that takes place that allows these cars to qualify or wait to the last minute to qualify is called the Race Spec Qualifier. It was designed by Ray Marshall of Buckeye Machine. It is a system here that's designed just like a tool and die. In other words, in 1 minute and 30 seconds, you can take an Indy car and get all the specifications of this Indy car and then present it for qualifying. This operation used to take 45 minutes to complete, another 15 minutes to tow the car back around for fuel. So new technical innovations are allowing these teams to wait to the last possible second for the track to cool and the fast speeds to come up.
And those fuel tanks in particular have been so convenient. Derek Walker told me it has allowed his team to do more engine mileage than they ever anticipated. And in fact, they almost ran out of engines, and use more tires than they ever anticipated. And Goodyear actually began to ration the tires because these tanks are so convenient. They save a huge amount of time. And of course, racing drivers being racing drivers, they want to be out on the racetrack because the weather conditions have been so great here for 2 weeks.
Doesn't bother them a bit that those tires are $1,300 a set of 4. They've been using them up at record pace. Take a look at the speeds of the drivers not qualified for the show. These are practice speeds. Robbie Gordon and A.J. Foyt's car at 222.5. Brabham ran 220, fighting off rumors that he was out of a ride. Davy Jones and John Andretti at 219. Willie Ribbs at 2:16. Andretti has been a big story here. He has helped Willie Ribbs and Hiro Matsushita get up to speed, and now it appears we'll have a chance to make his own qualifying attempt, as you've just heard, in A.J. Foyt's automobile. Am I not correct that A.J. Foyt is his godfather? Don't I remember that from the racing family tree? Those are the speeds this month. We'll be back in a moment to talk more about the second weekend of qualifying. The Goodyear Blimp Spirit providing aerial views here of the Indy 500 time trials. The blimp traveling to Indy from its home base up in Akron, Ohio, and will stay over to give ESPN more airborne views during the 500-mile race next weekend. And what a scene it is. The now 84-year-old racetrack where 77 races have run through history. It's been changed a good deal this year. Last year's winner, Al Unser Jr., is out for some shakedown laps today. Again, to remind you, if there is no qualifying attempt underway or waiting in the wings, the track opens for practice, and it has been warm indeed throughout most of this afternoon. Everyone waits for cooler speeds, and Al Jr. is seizing this moment to get out on a clear track and shake down the Valvoline machine that carried him to victory a year ago. Let's go back to earlier today and the qualifying attempt of Eddie Cheever. Now, we talk about pressure, we talk about race. Oh, this is morning practice, and this is the cowl coming off the car today.
And that could have been potentially a very dangerous and damaging situation for Eddie Cheever. The last time I saw that happen was in 1989 when the rear engine cover came off Danny Sullivan's car, and it was entering turn 3. Danny hit the wall and broke his arm, and that virtually destroyed the rest of his season. So Cheever was lucky it came off on the straight, not entering one of the corners.
Despite that difficulty, Cheever ran 2:22, the fastest practice lap this morning, came back for his qualifying attempt and used every inch of the road and was still, 6 or 7 miles an hour slower.
And had a tremendous run last year in the Ford engine car. Qualified second, the fastest Ford. He was in the middle of the front row of the grid. Those of you with a keen eye might have seen as he turned into turn 2 there, he actually brushed the outside wall with that right front tire starting that lap.
Cheever was, of course, in a great hurry. We talk about the pressure of time here at Indy. Well, he had a 12:15 tee time at Hanging Tree Golf Club today and said, we're going to go out and qualify her in the morning, get it in the show, and be done with it. But they were very disappointed with the speed.
And you'll see a new name on this car, Quorum, which is a new sponsor to IndyCar racing. It is a personal safety device, personal security device that is becoming all the rage now. But Eddie Cheever, nice and secure in this run, even though he did tattoo the wall once again with that Goodyear name.
Cheever coming in at 2:16, and the question is, where does that 6 miles an hour go between practice and qualifying?
Well, that is a frustration for Eddie Cheever also. It is hard to believe that these cars are so sensitive that they do change that much within a 2 to 3 hour period.
For the record, Cheever in at 2:16.415, and here's what he had to say after the checkered flag.
Eddie Cheever, you just qualified for your 4th Indianapolis 500 start, but probably not the speed you would have liked to have had.
I've done my run. I don't know if I've qualified yet. There's a lot of other cars out there. We were very disappointed with the qualifying run. We ran well this morning, and we're just going to see what happens now this afternoon. If not, I have the T car that has 3 more runs on it. But we did a 2:22 this morning, went out this afternoon, or late this morning, and it was understeering.
Now, the car, some anxious moments this morning in your final laps prior to qualifying.
I had the cowling fall off, which wasn't very good, so I got a feeling that 16 might stick, but I'm not too sure. I don't know. It's just a question of hanging around here all day now and waiting and running the T car.
Concerned about the weather tomorrow?
Yeah, but I can run the T car today also, so we'll see.
Well, maybe he dusted that tee time to stick around and see if that was going to be good enough to make the show. Take you back to last Sunday, again in the heat of the day. John Paul Jr. in the short chute loses the car. We'll talk more about the angle of attack that these cars are taking at the wall. Note that John Paul Jr., blew all 4 tires here, but didn't hit anything as he came down across the grassy berm.
And that was one of the designs that Tony George hoped would work here. The cars leave the racing line at a different angle, and we have seen many times in the 2 weeks leading up to today, cars spinning and not hitting anything. That's the most unusual thing here at the Speedway.
John Paul was back out this morning just after the track opened. In fact, the second qualifying attempt of the day. Qualifying began at 11 o'clock today. It was a cool morning in Indianapolis. The conditions were good, and Paul jumped right on it, thinking that perhaps he could sneak it into the show in the early hours, but the speed simply wasn't there, and they waved this one off.
That's right. Having done a 218.9 in this 91 Lola with a Buick engine, he thought he could extract another little bit at that critical time during the 4 laps, but it wasn't to be, and the gamble is too high for this small team that's based here in Indianapolis, run by Dave Mann, a local developer. The gamble was too high to take that speed. They want to wait for the better weather conditions.
John Paul Jr. will be among those that we expect to see back out here later this afternoon when the temperatures cool. Jerry Punch is standing by live with John Paul Jr.
Thank you very much, Dave. We are with John Paul. First of all, let me congratulate you on an excellent job of missing the concrete last Sunday.
Thank you very much. It was a little bit of luck and a little bit of driving skill.
Now, this morning you went out to qualify. Looks like it was going to be cool enough for an attempt early on, but you waved it off.
Yeah, we ran 2:18.9 in the warm-up, went right back out an hour later for qualifying and lost 4 miles an hour. We've been struggling when the sun shines, trying to find a happy balance. Hopefully this afternoon it will come back to us.
But last year, what a memory, a top 10 finish here at Indy.
Yeah, it was very nice. First time in the top 10, first time the cars actually finished the race, and we're really very thankful.
John Paul, good luck to you in qualifying.
Thank you very much.
(1963), 30 years ago, the Indy stage was set for revolution. Just 2 years after Sir Jack Brabham brought the first rear-engine car to the Speedway, the Lotus team was crossing over from Formula One with a serious 2-car effort for the Scotsman Jimmy Clark and the American racing legend-to-be Dan Gurney in his second Speedway appearance. But another American superstar of the future, Parnelli Jones, qualified at a scintillating speed of over 151 miles an hour. And at least for that day, traditional front-engine roadster power seemed the best way to go. Try telling that to Jack Turner. His roadster went upside down in practice, the 3rd time in 3 years that Jack had gotten on his head at the Brickyard. Miraculously, he survived with a back injury. Jack wisely decided to call it a career. Once the race was underway, it was Jones in his Agajanian Special taking command. But because he had to make 3 pit stops for every one of Jimmy Clark, the Lotus was able to lead 28 laps. The first time ever that a rear-engine car had led. There's JC waving Parnelli in for one of his many stops. Another rear-engine car in the race that wasn't having so much success was the roller skate, the Mickey Thompson-owned Harvey Aluminum Special, driven by the late Dwayne Carter. Halfway through it, threw a rod, ending Pappy's 11th and final start in the race for which he was so famous. 19 laps from the finish, Parnelli had to dodge the wrecked Eddie Sachs, but went on to win in a record 3 hours and 29 minutes. Afterwards, he was joined by the famed late J.C. Agajanian, making his final appearance in Victory Lane as a car owner. And Parnelli Jones will be back in a race car here in Indianapolis later this summer. Fastmasters coming to ESPN. Drivers still to qualify. Buddy Lazier, Marco Greco, and Ross Bentley, a pair of rookies. Rocky Moran, Davy Jones, and Willie T. Ribbs, all expected to make efforts here today. You've heard from John Paul Jr. Jeff Brabham has struggled this week. Robbie Gordon, the protege of A.J. Foyt, Brian Bonner, Didier Tays, Dominic Dobson, all coming up here along with John Andretti as we bring you the second weekend of time trials. Back at Indianapolis earlier today, Hiro Matsushita joined the early morning rush to get onto the track before the heat. Dropped the speeds, and he came up with a very respectable qualifying average of 2:19.9 to put him outside row 9.
Well, Hiro has had so much trouble in the last 2 weeks trying to get the necessary speed out of this car. Even when John Andretti got into it and got the car above 220, Hero still struggled. So for him to make a legitimate, realistic run at qualifying, it almost looked as if it was going to have to be a kamikaze effort. But in fact, if you look at this car very carefully, it handled very, very well during this run, and I'm sure Hero was pleasantly surprised to see the consistency of his run. He was over 220 for some of the laps, but he was very, very consistent. I'm sure he's delighted with that. I'm sure Derek Walker is, too.
Left himself a lot of room on exit from the corners, drove a very, very smart qualifying effort at 2:19.9. Matsushita, who crashed here a year ago and suffered a broken femur. So all in all, a very respectable performance for Hiro Matsushita outside row 9 in the field right now. Now the track is open for practice, and in fact I think it would be an appropriate time. We've talked about it. Let's go back and take a look at how Hiro ran this racetrack earlier today. I watched this and thought, the first lap, no way that's going to be very fast, because he just wasn't using much of the road.
Well, that is the key to watching cars that are handling well. They look slow, and Hero looked well in control. He didn't go below the line. Look at the room he leaves on the outside. Doesn't even go all the way up to the wall. That is the measure of a very good handling car, and Matsushita used it to full advantage.
You made the point that he had difficulty getting past 215. I mean, he looked wild out there trying to get over 215 miles an hour. John Andretti got in this car, one of 3 that he's driven here this month, and quickly brought it up to appropriate speed. We've talked last week about the fact that so much of this is a mental game, gaining confidence in what the car will do. Does just confidence account for 5 miles an hour?
Well, I think confidence and laps, and you're right. Last week we saw a tremendous example of teamwork with Raoul Boesel when he jumped in to help Lynn St. James. She got the confidence and went out and went very fast. Hero did something similar and took a few days more to get that confident level. But luckily, he peaked at the right time, which was this morning.
Well, exactly. He ran the second lap at 2:20, averaged 2:19.9, and then had a visit with our Jerry Punch in pit road.
What a difference a year makes for Hiro Matsushita. Hiro, a year ago you came here to qualify, memories you don't want to think about, but you're back this year with a smile and a great qualifying effort.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. Last year, I believe I was good before I got the accident, and this year, especially last week, I was struggling up to speed. I think I have a little of a car, and mostly is my psychological problem. And this week, John Andretti tested my car, and also yesterday, Scott Goodyear suggested to me a couple of things. I knew he's a good driver, and I could believe him. So I'm trying, and I'm challenging myself.
So the comfort level is back now. You feel very comfortable in the car now that you've been able to get good laps. I mean, you were over 220 for a couple laps.
Oh, yes. First lap was 220. And, yes, I got my confidence level back. Maybe, let's say, the 97-8% back.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Hiro Matsushita driving for Walker Motorsports, now with 2 cars in the show. Scott Goodyear way up front inside row 2. Matsushita takes the outside spot in row 9. But the Walker Motorsports story is not over. Let's go trackside to Jan Bekus.
We're standing by with the Walker Motorsports 3rd entry that's trying to get into this field. And both Derek and Dave, you talked about the fact that putting other drivers in the car is something that'll build a driver's confidence. If you know your ride can go out there and do 221, obviously that'll tend to build your confidence. Well, Derek Walker has been around a long time, and he knows a lot of the tricks. One thing, unfortunately, for a driver now, anything you do out in the car, unfortunately, can get downloaded to a personal computer, and you can find out exactly what the driver's doing as far as how much you're lifting off the gas. When a driver is deemed by his team owner to be lifting a little more than he thought, Derek Walker yesterday, for both Hiro Matsushita and for Willie T. Ribbs, ran the cars with only about 3/4 throttle to get the drivers used to actually holding the throttle wide open into the turns, because it's really all about the confidence and holding your foot on the floor. You might be going maybe 210 miles an hour into the corner as opposed to 220, but once you learn how to go through flat out, it opens up all the new possibilities. Now, speaking about this car, we see that Willie T. Ribbs has in fact donned the fireproof gear. The helmet is just about to go on. Willie T. Ribbs is getting ready to make a run, what could be his second Indy 500.
There is a technique to being fast here at the Speedway. And it was Mario Andretti who'd made me aware of it when I came here first in '83. He said, don't come off the power till you've turned the steering wheel. Willie T is a road racer. He was coming off the power before he turned into the corner, which upsets the balance of these cars, makes them very unstable. And it has taken him a long time to get through that barrier of driving deep into the corner before he comes off the power. That is the mental game he's been playing with himself, trying to get this car up to about 220 miles an hour.
You may wonder why a hard-nosed car owner would not say, well, if John Andretti can drive this car 220, I'll just put him in it for the race. The answer, of course, as you look at a live shot here of Scott Goodyear, the answer, of course, is sponsorship. Willie Ribbs was able to put together a deal with the help of Bill Cosby. He brings the money. And as you alluded to at the top of the show, the money is critical. Satisfying the sponsor is what it's all about. And that simply increases the pressure on Derek Walker here and his driver, Willie Ribbs. And we'll see them attempting their qualifying later today. ESPN, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a wrap-up not only of what's happening here, but throughout the world of Motorsports Speed Week on ESPN, part of our continuing coverage of the month of May at Indianapolis. One of the big stories here, not what's going to happen this year, but rather next year when Firestone comes back to the Brickyard. It's been a long time. Was it 71, I think, when Unser won the last race for them? They're coming back in full force, and we're going to have a tire war.
We will have a tire war, and that is good and bad. It's good for the teams that get contracted to the various tire companies and get involved in the development programs. It can be bad, though, for some of the smaller teams who get lost in the shuffle and get to use whatever's left over that the big boys don't want.
For 48 years, it was all Firestone. They won the first race here in 1911 with Ray Haroon. But then when they left the Speedway, Goodyear came in and took over and has been the exclusive tire supplier for years. We'll find out about tire wars and more as we go to Dr. Jerry Punch with Leo Mel.
And Dave, the man who has made the decisions for Goodyear for many, many years, the worldwide racing director, Leo Mel, is with me. And Leo, the concern the past day or so is there may have not been enough tires here in the garage area. What's the story?
Well, there's plenty of tires to run the Indianapolis 500. The concern was we put a restriction on Tuesday because this year so far they've run a record number of laps here. They changed one little thing. They haven't allowed them to refuel in the pits all week, and so the guys never went back and they just kept running. So they used a lot of tires. A new tire is faster than a used tire. So what we did is restrict the use of new tires so that we were sure that every team who has to qualify yet will have a set of new tires.
So you're basically allowing every team to have a fresh tire to qualify, but there's still plenty of tires for race day.
Yeah, there's plenty of tires. I mean, there's 1,000 sets out there someplace, and I'm not concerned at all for the race.
That's Leo Mel, the man at the top of Goodyear, who assures us there's plenty of tires for race day. Let's check in now with Jan Beekes.
Talking about the specific number of tires that Leo Mel was talking about, that's 1,000 sets that he mentioned, 4,000 tires. Well, you know, we've done our 20,000th lap out on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which works out to be about 50,000 miles. Well, you know, if you really look after your tires on a streetcar, you might get 50,000 miles out of it. You'd use 4 tires in 50,000 miles. They have used 4,000 tires on race cars in 50,000 miles.
And we alluded earlier to the reason why, the changes on pit road, the refueling capability, and I think a word is in order there, too, about the fact that simply the changes in the racetrack. We've not yet shown you how they've reconfigured the corners here, but they've taken away the apron on the bottom. They've changed the driving line. Everybody wants all the laps they can get.
Exactly. It's a learning curve for the drivers, teams, and cars here to utilize this new track to its best advantage. A Goodyear tire is good for about 80 miles. 80 good useful miles.
On the racetrack, 50,000 on the street. We'll talk more about those new racing lines and a whole lot more when we come back to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The shot is live from Indianapolis. That's John Moran waving to you, the pilot of the Goodyear blimp. Everybody at home, wave back to John. He's a nice fellow. Came down here to provide some great pictures of the Brickyard as we work our way through the second weekend of qualifying. You've all heard the old phrase, hurry up and wait. Well, here at Indianapolis, it is just the opposite. It is wait and then hurry up. Right now, we are waiting the cooler temperatures that we anticipate will bring a big hurry up at the end of the day for those still not qualified. For more on the track conditions, let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, guys, things change really fast out here. You may have noticed a little bit of haze came over the circuit. With a little bit of haze, the infrared heat gun that Goodyear uses has now shown the track has cooled from 122 degrees now down to 112. Just in the space of 15 minutes, we've seen some really fast laps, including our pole position run at 5:01 p.m. last Saturday by Ari Leyendijk was done at about these temperatures. Pretty soon, we should see some action.
All right, thank you very much, Jan Beekes. We spoke earlier in the past segment about the different driving lines here. I don't think anyone feels that he's been robbed more by the change of the racetrack. Effectively, what they did was eliminated the safety apron down below the white line. And for Jim Crawford, that's where he thought the racetrack was. Things have changed a lot for him.
They took away Jim Crawford's favorite racing line here at the Speedway, and it has caused him problems, particularly as the King Sports team, run by Kenny Bernstein, used Roberto Guerrero to set these cars up early in the first week, and Crawford did not like that setup at all. Didn't run very much and finally realized he was going to have to go his own road and set up his own car the way he liked it, which is what he began to work on, and he eventually squeezed out a 221 mile an hour, I believe, yesterday.
Crawford makes the point that he's about 40 pounds heavier than Guerrero and says that was part of the problem. The additional problem, of course, you see grass down there where Crawford used to run. And the other big change, of course, is the fact that the Buick last year was such a one-lap powerhouse, but this year they have not been able to find that kind of speed. They're running Chevy C engines this year.
Now, Crawford drove Guerrero's setup, and he didn't like it, so he went his own route, set up this car the way he liked it. Guerrero then got in to see that he liked Crawford's setup, and he said absolutely no way. So it's hard to believe they are so sensitive, not just to track conditions, but to driver style. Some drivers have more finesse when they turn the car into a corner, and some drivers like to attack the apex of a corner, and that makes a big, big difference.
Guerrero qualified last year for this team at 2:32. Jim Crawford says last year he had a lap on the team clocks at 237, spoiled by a yellow flag. Here's how the King Motorsports team have fared this year. Roberto Guerrero will start inside row 4, Al Unser outside row 8, and that run you just saw from Crawford put him inside row 10. He's standing by live with Jerry Funch.
You know, David, getting Jim Crawford's car dialed in weren't problems enough. The Scotsman had a problem with the engine. Not the engine he turned 221 miles an hour with yesterday, because that was the engine that teammate Al Unser Sr. qualified with. Now, USAC has a rule which precludes the use of an engine to qualify more than one car. So they had an engine flown in from VDS in Midland, Texas. But the airlines dropped it and broke it when it arrived here at Indianapolis, so they had to send back last night for another engine. It arrived late last night. They put it in the car, and thus the qualifying run at 217.6 miles per hour. So it has been a tough week for the Scotsman, Jim Crawford.
Crawford struggling a bit here, but nonetheless in the show. Big change from last year when that team with Buick power was right up at the front of the field. And I suppose psychologically, that's a tough thing to deal with, the difference between being up in the front row and being inside row 10.
Yeah, but you know, funny thing is, when you get into the second week, you are glad to just get into this race. It is such a drain on everybody in Gasoline Alley, in these garages, to continue to work day in, day out, and through the night many times, trying to get just enough speed to make it.
Garages, by the way, are where they keep the cars in Gasoline Alley.
Yes, they are.
And they have doors on them now, and the doors are closed all the time, which makes our job a little more difficult. Let us amplify a bit, if we may, on the Crawford situation, not so much as it relates specifically to Jim, but as it relates to all of these drivers. I want to show you a piece of tape of Jim Crawford qualifying here a year ago, and I want you to look at where the car is running, all four wheels below the white line.
That's the key. This is a great piece of video. Look at this. The white line there is where the grass is this year. That's the line they took away from Jim Crawford. Now watch this turning into turn 1. Below the white line is where the green grass is now. Sheila watches last year. That's where the grass is. Jim's favorite line is now gone, and that has caused him tremendous amount of problems. And Mario Andretti is another driver who likes to go below that line. Now look at this year's qualifying run. See where the grass is? That's where Jim needs to be and likes to be and wants to be. It's not an option this year. One of the major changes here at the Speedway.
That change made for a couple of reasons. Slowing the cars is one of the issues. Down below that white line are a series of rumble strips which discourage running down there. What they have done is essentially required the drivers, by the nature of the entry into the corner now, to lift. You cannot run this racetrack flat, and that was intentional. They wanted to slow the speeds a little bit. The other thing that has changed is that by running into the corner higher, the angle of attack at the wall is much shallower should the car spin. You alluded earlier to the fact that we have seen cars spin here, but not hit the wall. I believe Jan Bikas may have more on that. No, we'll get to that in a little bit as we talk more about the safety elements and the changes that have been made here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Dave Despain with Derek Daly. We'll be back with more right after this. Here, trap speed times here from thus far in the month. Quickest, 233 miles an hour. One Nigel Mansell of Formula One fame has been fastest down the straightaway. That speed is down rather dramatically, about 10 miles an hour from a year ago as a result of changes in the cars and also the changes we were just discussing in the racetrack. Let's go down trackside for an amplification on that from Jan Bikas. Jan?
Well, gentlemen, when you're talking about the weight difference between Jim Crawford and Roberto Guerrero, that takes a totally different setup on the car. Let's take a look at what 40 pounds is to a racing mechanic. These are carbon fiber rotors and carbon fiber pads that are used on the Indy cars here only at Indianapolis and Michigan. They're not allowed to be used during kart competition. For a mere $6,000, you can make your Indy car 40 pounds lighter. That difference, it made a huge difference in the handling of those two cars that you were speaking about. Now, if the only problem with these is during the race, they don't work unless they're warm. They work great when they're hot. During the race, some people have decided they'd rather have the steel or the cast brake rotors. But whatever you qualify a car here at Indianapolis, whatever is on it, that's how you have to start the race. So do you want to run quick today and make the race, or do you want to make sure you can stop if there's a problem? The only thing you can do as a driver is to warm it up with your left foot in case you have to use it in a panic.
I tell you what I'd like to do. I'd like to ban those carbon fiber discs. Then you don't have to have the question, and you can keep the $6,000 in your back pocket.
There's a vote in favor of the reining in of technology, which in fact the folks who make IndyCar rules other than at the Speedway have done, because their sense is that they don't need that additional cost. But here at the Speedway, the brakes are legal, and therefore they have to make that decision. Look at all those old pace cars from previous years here at Indianapolis. Oh, and look there. Look at all those new pace cars. If you're important at Indianapolis, the symbol of importance is you get to drive one of those pace car replicas. It's a Chevy. Say hello to the first Chevrolet ever to run at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Louis Chevrolet, who drove in the first race here. A Swiss immigrant, a brilliant mechanical engineer, he brought the Chevrolet Motor Car Company to life 2 years after his Speedway debut. 10 years after that, he built a couple of 500 winning cars. In other words, the Chevy tradition of performance at Indianapolis dates back to day one. That tradition has been maintained by a record 9 Chevy models chosen through the years to pace the world's greatest race. The first Chevy pace car, 1948. But here's an irony. Louis Chevrolet's last drive here at the wheel of the pace car was in 1926. The car was a Chrysler. Fleetmaster, Bel Air, Corvette have all paced the race, but this year's fourth appearance by a Camaro pace car sets another Indy record. Striking for its rock and roll graphics, the Z28 is only the second pace car in history to perform in stock trim. 275 horsepower. Didn't need any hop-up work to keep this car in front of the race cars. The pace car pilot, head man at GM Chevy Motor Division, Jim Perkins, the general manager.
Well, Mr. Perkins, the reception for this 1993 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 pace car has been just incredible.
Jerry, it really has. It's amazing. We built 645 of these pace car replicas, and we could have built 6,000. But, of course, the Z28 is going well. The Camaro is going well itself. We're very pleased at Chevrolet with a brand-new car and a brand-new year for us to be a part of this great spectacle in racing.
And Chevrolet, more than any other manufacturer, has had the lead as far as pace cars here at Indianapolis.
We really have had a great privilege. You know, we paced Indianapolis after this time 9 times, and Camaro 4 times. And I don't think any other car has paced it 4 times. And the Holman George family is awfully nice to us to continue to entertain us as a pace car, and we love it.
Second time you've driven the pace car, back in 1990, you drove it. Did you learn anything 3 years ago that you can put to use here for 1993?
I learned a lot. You know, you really listen to Don Bailey. That's what you do. And USAC does a great job. They really work on safety and work on a great start to the race. The one thing that I was told, and I believe it to my heart today, is that you want to participate in the greatest spectacle in racing. You don't want to be the greatest spectacle in racing. So what we've attempted to do is really pay attention, get the miles in that we have to get in. I recertify next Friday. It's not just a gimme kind of deal, you know. We have to do it just like a race driver has to do it, and we're so pleased to be able to do it.
You know, Chevrolet has been so critical, so important to the success of Indianapolis. 5 Indy 500 wins in a row.
That is true, and the Elmore connection with us has been phenomenal. Of course, the competition level is a lot different this year and even last year than it has been in the last 5 years. We expect it's going to be great. We expect that all competition is good for the sport. We think we'll raise the level of the sport, and quite honestly, we're ready to get it on.
Mr. Perkins, thank you for joining us.
Jerry, it's a pleasure, and thank you for just giving us this shot this morning to talk about a great car company, and the greatest spectacle in racing.
Perkins is a former drag racer, by the way, and ever willing to stir the Ford versus Chevy arguments. I would be quick to point out that in their efforts to extend that winning streak, that Chevy pace car will lead a front row that's all Ford-powered.
He made an interesting point. You don't just arrive here and throw the pace car out on the racetrack. They have tested that car here. They're chewing the suspension and the engine to make sure around this racetrack it can run at speeds up to 145 to 150 miles an hour safely.
The cars are practicing at well in excess of that speed right now. The shot is live from Indianapolis, and still ahead will be that all-important happy hour, the final attempt for many drivers to qualify. We're back live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The track is open for practice. Should someone present themselves for a qualifying attempt, the track would close, and that qualifying attempt would take place. We don't anticipate that will happen until the temperatures have dropped somewhat here at the Speedway. It started cool this morning, warmed up as it does this time of year. The temperature has again begun to drop ever so slowly in anticipation of the runs to come. This is Buddy Lazier, one of those still to qualify. The shot is live, and they've had a bit of a struggle here this month trying to get to speed.
A bit of a struggle. This team is owned by Buddy and his dad, Bob Lazier. It's a 91 Lola with a Buick engine. These Buick engines have as much as 800 horsepower on tap here. You can't use it flat out all the time like you could last year. This car went on fire last weekend and caused a lot of damage, took Buddy off the racetrack. But last night, he did a 219.9 mile an hour lap last night. He hasn't been able to do that today, but if he can reproduce something like that late in the day, he could be a realistic qualifier.
And here is the A.J. Foyt team. I'll check that. That's Eddie Cheever. And it appears that he blew off the golf game and is indeed going to come out here today and spend a little more time working on the car. Now that they have qualified at 2:16, when we look at the slow speeds, Cheever, in fact, is right there in the middle of the bump list. Mark Smith is the slowest qualified driver at 2:14. Cheever achieving only 2:16 today, so they need some more miles per hour in case they have to go back and qualify the backup.
That's right, and Cheever's car, one of last year's Penske's with the B version of the Chevrolet, as we pick up Stefan Johansson in Tony Bettenhausen's car. So emotional last weekend when he qualified after his 4 laps, could hardly talk to our interviewer at the end of his run, the most emotional time he's ever had in racing. Now he's out doing his race day setup.
And, of course, Johansson is considered a rookie here. Those two cars were out drafting earlier today, and Tony Bettenhausen blew an engine. We take a look at the qualified rookies in the show. Johansson leading that list in terms of starting position. He'll be outside row 2. Nigel Mansell will start in the middle of row 3. Nelson Piquet, Mark Smith, and Olivier Gouillard safely in the show. And we skip Stefan Gregoire in order to make the point that he is, in fact, the fastest rookie. And looky here, A.J. Foyt waving to the fans, and who's that walking alongside?
Well, I'm glad to say it is John Andretti, dressed in his Copenhagen uniform of A.J. Foyt. Andretti has been a journeyman all week here, driving other people's cars, hoping that he would get a ride, that he could qualify and race in this great race. Now, there was speculation that John Andretti may qualify a car for somebody else, and not race it. John said he would not do that. He said anybody that qualifies for this race should only make it on their own merit. That's why he wasn't even entertaining that type of thought.
Safe to speculate, I think that is not AJ's driving suit that he's wearing, although it'd be interesting to know where he came up with the Copenhagen costume so quickly.
Well, if it is, there's a lot of safety pins in the back of it.
That deal, of course, was just put together here within the last couple of days, but it appears it is now a done deal, and young Andretti will get a shot in AJ's car. Stefan Johansson circulating in a drafting exercise here with last year's winner, Al Unser Jr. Let's go back trackside to Dr. Jerry Punch.
Guys, a minute ago you saw John Andretti standing there getting ready to take his laps out in the 1992 Cosworth XB. We were in the garage earlier talking with AJ. If you turned around and saw the difference, maybe Derek Daly can comment on it. Here's John Andretti sitting on one bench watching the crew work on his car, very calm and relaxed, looking as if he's trying to decide which movie to go to tonight. And if you look 5 feet away, there's Robbie Gordon sitting beside him, the young rookie driver who's been over 222 miles per hour in practice, looking like someone is ready to shoot him and hasn't offered him a blindfold yet. I mean, what a difference, what a contrast in emotions. A rookie driver trying to qualify for his first Indy 500, and John Andretti just so relaxed, waiting to get his chance to go on the racetrack. Derek, you remember those days?
I remember those days very well, and personally I think it is a great situation for Foyt. I must be a personal interest for him to take someone like a Robbie Gordon, who's raw, very talented, doesn't know much about super speedways like this, and really is going to go through almost a classroom technique with an AJ Foyt, literally telling him how and what to do. And of course then he has the experience of a John Andretti, who we see here getting suited up. I think he has the perfect mix. But John Andretti, to give you an idea how his experience has helped people, he jumped into Willie T's car, did 220 miles an hour. Then he jumped into Matt Schuster's car, 220 miles an hour. He only did 12 laps in AJ Foyt's car last night and did 219 miles an hour. So John Andretti's experience and knowledge around this speedway is being put to tremendous use, and I'm just so glad he has an opportunity to qualify.
Dr. Punch, did we answer your question?
Well, you did. You know, and AJ was telling me about how not only how impressed he was with John Andretti, but Robbie Gordon, the youngster, and what a teacher to have, Derek. I mean, to have AJ Foyt, who's been going around the racetrack, finding positions outside of the racetrack, turn 2, turn 3, and basically talking his young driver through the laps here, even in testing back last winter. And AJ told him a few minutes ago, said, hey, young man, you came here, you tested, and it was easy. That was in winter time. It was cool. You ran 2:16 with no boost. This is May, and it's a whole different world here when you try to qualify with all these folks and the whole world watching. And Robbie Gordon's eyes became so large and so wide open today. Let's go get them. So they're going to head out to the grid here very shortly.
I do know of an incident that happened earlier this week. Robbie Gordon ran the car, began to set it up the way he liked it, the way he thought they should do it. Foyt wasn't here. Foyt came back, looked at the setup, said, no way, change it, do this, this, and this, which they did do. Obviously, when Foyt says something, you do it, if you're a crewman and you want your job for very long. But they changed the car. Robbie Gordon went out and ran 222 miles an hour and realized Foyt does know what he's talking about around here.
2 points about Robbie. His crash, of course, was the trigger that prompted AJ's decision to retire. And in answer to the burning question of the day, the driving suit being worn by John Andretti is in fact a borrowed suit that belongs to Robbie Gordon. Let's take a look, if we can, at the best practice speeds of the day thus far. Jeff Brabham, who was rumored to have been fired from his team, demonstrates that is not the case. He's at 220 today.
And he blew his engine right after he did that 220-mile-an-hour lap.
Robbie Gordon has been over 220, but not today. He's at 218, as is John Andretti. Willie Ribbs still looking. He's at 215. These are drivers who have not yet qualified, drivers from whom the clock is running out. Rain tomorrow means it may be all over here at the end of day 3. We'll be right back. The quest to qualify at Indianapolis Motor Speedway today, 75 degrees. Skies now listed as hazy, meaning that the sun is partially obscured and the track temperature begins to drop. The breeze, I don't think as much of a problem today as it was perhaps last Saturday on pole day when some of the drivers said it was a big problem.
The wind has been a problem here in the years past. Believe it or not, since they've blocked in each end with new grandstands, it's not as serious a problem as it was in the years past. But in the last hour, the breeze is almost becoming a wind.
with the grandstands that now exist here, something like 300,000 seats, and you see there how they ring the outside of the racetrack. They have now built, in addition, a huge grandstand on the inside of the front straightaway, and some of the drivers talk about a Venturi effect, that the wind actually inside between the grandstands is stronger than it is outside, and it can buffet the cars pretty good.
And believe it or not, the wind became an issue last Saturday when these cars began to go up and down in speed. And Tom Anderson, who's the team manager for Ari Leindeck and Chip Ganassi's team, he actually said to me at one stage, when the wind blows out of the east, our car handles at its best. That just absolutely blew me away.
You can see the windsock atop the traditional scoring pylon here as Robbie Gordon now is climbing into the A.J. Foyt livery and preparing to go out. The rookie has hit the fence here 3 times this month. A little bit of excessive exuberance and the learning curve that you talked about. And I think we have to be glad for Robbie that he didn't have to pay a big price for rookie mistakes here.
And Robbie Gordon, remember that name because you will hear about it. He is very, very talented. 23, 24 years old, I think now. Plucked almost out of obscurity by Ford from the desert, from off-road truck racing. He is a very special talent. He's great to watch. He's very spectacular, and he is under the guiding hand of AJ now, who hopefully will turn him into a big star.
A lot of people say that he has very much the same personality that AJ had when he came here in 1958. Well, for Dale Coyne's team, things have been even tougher than they have for AJ's team, and we're going to take you back to May 12th. This was the first hard wall smack of the month. This is Robbie Buell. This is the moment, I think, when I became convinced that the new, stronger foot boxes were doing their job. That's a pretty solid nose-first impact right there.
That's right. Robbie Buell did receive a concussion from this, spent 1 night in hospital, but for Dale Coyne Racing, you could not have scripted a worse nightmare month of May.
That sort of set the tone for things for Coyne's team. This is Ross Bentley after an unusual fuel leak and fire. You can't see the flames. It's burning methanol. The car is on fire. He suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns, bailing out in a hurry, simply driving down the racetrack, and the car bursts into flames.
And the key to methanol is you need to dilute it as quickly as possible, and as the flames still burn on Ross Bentley here. Look at the crew members from Kenny Bernstein, King Sports team, run with the necessary bucket of water to douse those flames and neutralize that methanol. However, Ross Bentley still received 1st and 2nd degree burns from this incident.
He has since been back in the car and has been medically cleared to drive and hopes to perhaps get a shot at the field here today. Robbie Buell again, his 2nd crash of the weekend, and this one effectively eliminated his hopes of getting into the show. They're out of cars.
And it's fair to tell you, this was a mechanical failure. This was not a driver error. He broke 5th gear, which took away all the drive at the critical time, and of course put him into the wall and totally destroyed this racing car. The car is dead. The other side of the car was totally destroyed, and that effectively put Robbie Buell out for the month of May.
Even though that car broke loose early in the corner, still the angle of attack at the wall because of the track shape change prevented serious injury. Let's go to Dr. Jerry Punch with more on the saga of this team.
Well, this Plainfield, Illinois car owner does not give up at all. And Dale Coyne, you came here with your biggest stable ever at Indianapolis. You had 5 cars and 3 drivers, but we just showed the folks at home what a tough month it's been for you.
It's been tough. We've got down to 2 cars right now. We've got Eric out in a 91 Chevy car because we've had a lot of troubles with the Buick engines. We're switching Ross's car over to Buicks as we speak, or over to Chevys, excuse me, as we speak. We just hope it doesn't rain tomorrow. We could use a little more time. We've been backed up quite a lot this last 2 weeks.
Well, what about Robbie Buell? You made an announcement that he will not make an attempt to qualify.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. You know, we're real happy with Robbie and appreciative of our sponsor, MyJack, to understand our situation. And we lost 2 cars, so we're trying to pick up the pieces and get ready for the rest of the season for Robbie.
Well, you painted the 91 Lola you bought from Turley. That's the Mormon walk that's currently on the racetrack.
Yes, that's right. We're trying to get Eric up to speed, and he's a good driver. Today's the first day he's been released to drive, so we're just trying to see how the day goes here.
It's been a tough month for this car owner, but right now he's watching his young driver, Eric Bachelard, try to get a new car up to speed, guys.
You saw the 2 Buell crashes. You also saw the fire for Bentley at the top of the show. You saw Bachelard's crash, and so the pressure is on. He mentioned the rain. The forecast is for an 80% chance of rain tomorrow. That's a very bad gamble to hope to wait. You've got to do your business here today.
It is a bad gamble, but in the situation of Eric Bachelard with Dale Coyne, he doesn't have an option. This is a new car that is about to jump into. The chances of him getting that car up to speed quick enough might be slim. I mean, if they happen to hit on the magic setup quickly, it could happen. But Eric Bachelard, as of yesterday, was still on crutches in Gasoline Alley. He was so uncomfortable from the effects of that crash.
Bear in mind, unique at Indianapolis, it is the car that qualifies. And so Bachelard would not have the option, for example, of going to a backup car. In his case, the backup cars have all been broken. We'll be right back. The New York Islanders can appreciate pressure, such as that of those still to qualify here at Indianapolis. Game 4, the NHL playoff tonight. They trail the Canadiens 3-0. So they are under the gun. Got to win tonight. Here is the look from the Goodyear blimp, piloted by John Moran, as we overlook Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The blimp here to provide the aerial shots today, and we'll be staying here throughout the week to provide additional coverage on ESPN. Let's take a closer look at the front row for this year's Indianapolis 500. Ari Leyendyk, your pole sitter, coming up with the big run when it counted last week at happy hour, and he'll start just ahead of Mario Andretti and Raul Boesel. Ari Leyendyk, your pole sitter, of course, was the 1984 Super V star, and here he is racing in Michigan alongside Jeff McPherson. This race ended in a virtual dead heat. The cars were running so fast they took away the front wings. We go to Sebring. Look here, co-driving with a guy named Derek Daly and somebody else named Jeff Redmond. Daly, are you in there somewhere getting champagne sprayed all over you? 1990, of course, he came to the Speedway and scored his first IndyCar victory. If you're going to win one, win the Indy 500, by golly. In victory lane, celebrating with the car owner, Doug Shearson, the traditional bottle of milk. Shearson no longer in IndyCar racing. Ari has gone on to win 2 more races, Phoenix and Nazareth, both in 1991. We take you back to Saturday and the run that makes Ari Leyendyk the star for the month of May, sitting on the pole for 2 full weeks.
And of course, we take you back to Saturday evening, because Saturday morning, believe it or not, Leyendyk made a run and his first lap was 215 miles an hour. Not even good enough to qualify him for the back row of the grid. They made a mechanical change to this car. They changed the shock absorbers. Leyendyk went out. It was totally the wrong thing to do. However, it did give Mo Nunn, his engineer, a clear indication of the way he needs to set this car up, the opposite to what they did. Went back to the garage area, changed the car. Leyendyk came out late in the day. You can see the shadows. That is the key to speed here at the end of the day. And of course, Leyendyk put together this magical pole position run.
And so it is Ari Leyendyk, who, with his wife Mika, is expecting twins shortly after the finish of the race, hoping to win his second Indy 500 from the pole. Mario Andretti sat on the pole 5 hours, went out early in the day, and claimed what proved to be the second fastest starting spot. Mario Andretti, of course, came here in 1965 and peeled off the tape that then indicated a rookie driver, the rookie stripes, and he removed them under the watchful eye of legendary chief mechanic Clint Brawner, who was a big factor in Mario's career early on. And watch the smile. Yeah, I'm happy not to be a rookie anymore. Then, of course, 1969, the one year, the only time in all those efforts, Mario Andretti was able to win the race. That's the famed car owner Andy Granatelli alongside as the victory celebration begins. And back then, everyone thought surely Mario Andretti would win a handful of these things before his career was over. He's not won another one since. Andretti came here in 1992 and was part of the carnage that was the Indy 500, the spin, the smack of the turn 4 wall. He escaped with broken toes, much more fortunate than some of the others who had that same sort of incident last year. And then, just a few weeks ago at Phoenix, at the age of 53, Mario became the oldest driver ever to win an IndyCar race, and it has really pumped him up as he comes here for this month of Indy and uncorked a great run last Saturday.
Great to see that win at Phoenix. to win a race in the 90s was one of the most important things for Mario before he finishes off. But here last Saturday, he was the number 2 car out, set the time that he hoped would be the pole. He sat around all day long, and it eventually was knocked off by Lyondike. But a great run. Mario was one of the developers of this Ford Lola engine package, and now it dominates as we see all 3 front row cars using this Lola Ford package. But Mario Andretti, still the legend, and I'm glad to see that he still enjoys tremendous success in IndyCar racing.
223.414, the run for Mario that puts him in the middle of row 1. And on his right will be Raul Boesel, the Brazilian native who loves racing at the Brickyard, and will start outside row 1. He came here as a youngster in 1985, brought here, and I think no surprise, by Dick Simon, a young Brazilian whose family wanted him to get into equestrian jumping, but he preferred racing cars. In 1987, he went off and won the World Sports Car Championship for the Walkinshaw team, expanding his racing resume a bit. And then back at the Speedway in 92, when Hiro Matsushita crashed, Boesel climbed in the car, came from 25th to finish 7th in the race, and this year has also helped Lynn St. James to set up her car. But here's a guy who last Saturday thought he had a real shot at the pole and was a little disappointed that it got away.
He actually was in deep discussion with Dick and Diane Simon last Saturday as to whether they would pull the car from the line and go to the back of the field or not, or the back of the line, because he really thought he could knock Mario, who was then the pole sitter, off the pole. The sun went behind the clouds. Dick Simon said, no, let's go for it now. No sooner was he on the racetrack after 1 lap than the sun appeared again, the temperature rose, and probably sapped away a little bit of that critical speed that Boesel needed to get what would have been his first pole position in IndyCar racing.
Boesel, known as a Charger, and also one of the young stars brought along by Dick Simon, who has a real reputation for bringing newcomers to the Speedway, getting them up to speed, and as he made the point this morning in the paper, bringing them up to speed safely. He thinks that's a very, very important priority. Boesel, I think, could be the sleeper on race day.
He could be the sleeper, and one of those drivers who works very hard in the off season, in the wintertime, gets his 3-piece suit on and his briefcase and pounds the streets of Brazil to bring some backing here to secure this ride. Sadia is his main Brazilian backer, who is in the food business in Brazil.
Boesel at 222.379 for the 3rd best qualifying attempt, and thus it will be Lyondike, Andretti, and Boesel on the front row for the 77th running.
Okay, whose eyes are those, David?
Quick.
Jeff
Looks
Brabham.
like Jeff Brabham trying to qualify. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And have you ever noticed in the crowd there's never any banners? You never see hi ESPN, all that stuff like we see on the other ones? Well, we caught someone breaking the rules. It's against the rules to have banners here. Bob Jenkins, our own comrade who's working for the IMS radio network. There he is. Hi, Bob. He there has a sign to wish you well up there in the booth. I have a feeling the USAC officials are going to come make him take those down. Guys?
Arrest that man. He's breaking the rules. Bob, of course, is the anchor for the radio network covering the 500. And I think later in the show, we're going to get an opportunity not only to relive his call of last year's last lap, but also an interesting spin on that call of the last lap. To bring you up to date, if you have just joined us, we're about halfway through our 3-hour coverage of qualifying here, and I have to believe that the last hour is going to be as action-packed and jam-packed as any of our qualifying shows have been, because we have so many cars who have to do so much so quickly with the forecast for tomorrow.
And that is the key. And the forecast tomorrow is what everybody keeps their eye on. There may not be another day to try and practice and qualify for this event, so you may be forced to play your hand between 5 and 6 today when the sun goes down and the shadows appear. So it is going to be a fascinating last hour.
You're watching Eric Bachelard. The shot is live. He who hit the fence earlier this week came back on crutches, was cleared by the doctors, and is back in the car, and is one of the dozen still hoping to qualify here. The track is open for practice. John Andretti also out continuing his quest for speed in the A.J. Foyt car, and that's going to be a pretty impressive team with Andretti, who many feel got a raw deal last year when he lost his IndyCar drive. He's at 220 miles an hour. not bad for the heat of the day.
Not bad at all. You know, you mentioned last year and his problems. Sometimes the package just doesn't work. There isn't a chemistry, you don't gel, there isn't harmony between a team, and that was probably the situation with John at Hall VDS. It was probably better that he moved on to continue his career in another area. Of course, the area he didn't realize at the time would be drag racing, Top Fuel racing, which he was spectacular in his debut, but he missed Memphis last weekend because he wanted to be here at the Speedway, walking up and down the pit lane, hoping to land the ride, and thankfully he did. There he is.
Impressive indeed in that drag racing debut. He beat Joe Amato, the four-time world champ, made it all the way to the semifinals the first time he raced the car. Andretti, who of course dreams of following the family footsteps and starring in Indianapolis, is back in pit road. Here is Jeff Brabham, the four-time IMSA champion, and a rumor swept this speedway early in the week that because as the third member of this team trying to get to speed and not having achieved the speed, that he was going to be replaced. And he said that it was very hard on him and the team. Proved to be absolutely false.
I think that's right. And the rumor actually gathered momentum when Nelson Piquet suddenly appeared in Brabham's car earlier this week. And it was purely trying to use Piquet's knowledge and experience to feel what this car was doing. These Buick Lolas, these are 93 Lolas. They were very loose when they came here. A spooky condition for a driver to have to use here at the Speedway. But Jeff didn't like it, couldn't quite put his finger on the problem. Piquet jumped in. They threw all sorts of springs and shock absorbers at the car, basically made it very stiff, and Nelson Piquet did a 221 mile an hour in this car. Jeff, of course, was back into it, did 220 this morning, had a huge hand grenade engine blow up that sawed the engine in half, went back to Gasoline Alley, put another Buick V6 into it, and now he's hoping to get the job over and done with and qualified and relax tomorrow by getting it done today.
Let's go to Jan Bikus.
Well, Dave, you talked about that the last hour would be all the action happening here. It might be the last hour and a half. We've had the first car presented at the line. In fact, the Robbie Gordon number 41 Copenhagen entry of A.J. Foyt, they're not just going to be going through tech. We've checked with the crew. This car will roll out for a qualification attempt once it does pass tech. We know, as we spoke about at the opening of the show, they can run these cars through in under 3 minutes, so I think we'll have an hour and a half of action because the other teams don't know yet what we know, and that is this car will go for a qualification attempt. As soon as they see that, they'll all be scrambling for the line.
And so the line will form early. Wait and hurry up, we said, was the theme today. Perhaps the waiting is over and the hurrying is about to start at this 225-mile-per-hour racetrack. We'll be right back.
We welcome you back to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Our shots high atop Indianapolis, courtesy of the Goodyear airship Spirit of Akron, as we are in day 3 of qualifying for this 77th annual Indianapolis 500. We talk about Indy being the mecca of motorsports. We caught up with another champion here, 1992 Trans Am champion Jack Baldwin. And Jack, I can tell you right off by looking at you why you're not an Indy car. You're too big.
I'm too big. I'm the same size as Rocky Moran. He fits. But actually, you know, I'm real happy driving my Hot Wheels Camaro and Trans Am. And, you know, next year in August, the stock cars, the Winston Cup cars are coming here. So maybe that's my forte here.
You appear with a little bit of support for some of the guys you're running IROC with. You've got Ari Leyendijk in the IROC series, Al Unser Sr. and Jr., and you've got a lot of friends who are right here doing what they do best.
Absolutely, and that's part of the thrill of being here. You know, this is it's the greatest spectacle in racing, and it really is, and it's nice to be here, and I've got a lot of friends here, and this is Bubble Day, and it's kind of here supporting them, you know, helping them, you know, just rooting for them, helping them get in, that kind of thing.
Jack, thanks for joining.
Hey, thank you, I appreciate it.
Reigning Trans Am champion Jack Baldwin here in the pits. Let's go back upstairs to Dave Despay.
Thank you, Doc. Good to see you, Jack. Here is the story of the moment. The shot is live. The car belongs to A.J. Foyt. The driver is Robbie Gordon, and the trigger for this moment of presenting for qualifying, Derek, was what?
Well, you get the signal when the speed comes, and Robbie Gordon went out and ran 2 laps, 219.2, followed that with a 220.1. Came in, said it's ready to go, boys, and puts it in line for tech. Now watch what they do here. Every time they present one of these cars for an official qualifying run, you have to go to USAC, and they measure everything on this car to make sure it complies with the regulations as written by USAC.
Robbie Gordon, one of the most talked about rookies in IndyCar history, has apparently triggered the charge to get through tech and get on to the racetrack. A young man who comes in with a very impressive racing resume despite his youth. He won his first championship for Ford, the power plant that will drive his efforts here today. That, of course, was in the off-road racing division. He was a truck racer who specialized in the desert, but he won the pole the very first time he ever raced on an oval. That was at Atlanta at the ARCA race. Won his first ever Trans Am race. This is at Long Beach when he had to get Al, or rather Pete Halsmer, out of the way and smoked the tires a bit, but still went on to win. And then, of course, A.J. Foyt said, I think maybe this is the kid. A.J. at that point already thinking about retirement, and he put youngster in the car. IndyCar race at Australia earlier this year, dueling with no less than the Formula One champion and eventual race winner Nigel Mansell. Crashed at Phoenix. A lot of people said, yeah, impatience is the problem for this youngster. Here you see him bailing out of the car. And then at Long Beach, a little bit of temper, a payback for Eddie Cheever that drew him a disqualification and a big fine, which seems to me to be somewhat A.J. Foyt-like. I've seen A.J. do similar things to that. Now, as we go live, he is in the line to qualify, and the excitement is about to begin here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. 3 spots remain. About a dozen drivers want them, and we'll be back to see who's going to get them.
Indianapolis Motor Speedway, welcome to third day qualifying. And boy, it's starting to heat up here in the pits. Everyone getting ready to go through tech inspection. And one driver we saw this morning, he had troubles. Jeff Brabham, the 4-time IMSA GT champion. And Jeffrey, you had a problem with the engine this morning. You've been back out. Are you getting back up to speed?
Well, I'm not sure yet. You know, I went out, things are starting to happen now, and we wanted to go out and just shake the car down. Unfortunately, I got out in the groove and did 1 lap, and the yellow light came on. So I'd have liked to have got some more laps, and I think maybe I still will be able to. So it's still an hour and a half to go, and we've got a couple, maybe one person just qualifying now, and hopefully I can get out again and then go and qualify.
And we've got Derek Daly sitting upstairs holding on to his chair saying, maybe I could come down and help a little bit, but you're doing just fine.
Yeah, as I say, the car's working pretty good now, and we ran 220 easily this morning, and it's just a matter of going out and doing it.
How difficult is it? I mean, I'm told that even the lightest adjustments in a car makes a big difference on the track.
It does, and the temperature seems to make a big difference. I mean, Eddie Cheever this morning ran 222 in the morning and went out and qualified at 216. And it's really hard to read right now. So, I ran a comfortable 220 this morning, but when you go out to qualify it, you don't know how the car's going to react. So I don't right now.
Jeffrey, good luck to you.
Okay, thanks.
Jeff Brabham looking for his 10th start in the Indianapolis 500.
I sense a bit of apprehension there as Brabham wonders what his car is going to do. We wonder, too, what's going through the mind of this young man right now. Robbie Gordon, obviously so serious about his racing efforts and well aware that he is part of at least the most famous IndyCar racing program of all time. He is lining up for a live qualifying attempt as we come back with day 3 of time trials for the Indianapolis 500. We're back live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Robbie Gordon awaits the firing of the engines, a young man who actually started his racing career as a motocross competitor, and I think at his age has probably starred in more different disciplines than perhaps any driver ever to come to the Speedway, but this is the biggest moment of his life.
It really is, and it's hard to believe he did not even have 15 single-seater races in his whole career as experience. But at Imola for the San Marino Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago, the 2 drivers they talk about, even in Formula One circles out of America, are Paul Tracy and Robbie Gordon. Everybody, because of the advent of television now being worldwide for IndyCar racing, Robbie Gordon and Paul Tracy are being spoken about in glowing terms by the Formula One people.
Well, it's been a rough introduction to this speedway. Gordon, as we mentioned, has brushed the wall 3 times, in each case without major damage and without injury, but that has earned him the wrath of his mentor, A.J. Foyt, on a couple of occasions. Now, as Robbie makes his warm-up lap live, I'm wondering what's happening back down on pit road. Has this triggered a wholesale rush to get in line to qualify? Let's go to Jan Bikus.
Yes, Dave, it has triggered a rush, and in fact, it's his teammate that's standing by, John Andretti. Your teammate, Robbie Gordon, just rolled out, and you'll be next. Your thoughts on his run and then yours?
Well, basically, we just put 20 gallons in the car, and AJ said if we came out and ran 217 or 218, and we wanted to roll in the line and try it, and so that's what we're doing, but we both ran 220, so there's no reason why we shouldn't go out and try and get both these Copenhagen Fords in the race.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
And John said go out and try it. Remember, if they're not successful in this run, they have 3 attempts per car. So John Andretti could, in fact, wave off if he didn't like it and go again later on in the day.
The critical issue here, one of the critical issues, is the weather. It's supposed to rain tomorrow. If you wave off today, if indeed a half dozen cars pull up into line and you don't get back out, you may not get another chance. The green has fallen on Robbie Gordon, the sensational rookie under the tutelage of A.J. Foyt, is making his first official qualifying attempt here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You watch the driving line from the Goodyear blimp, and he's perfectly clean through 1 and 2.
He is clean. He's on brand new tires here for maximum grip in the corners. He was allowed 2 warm-up laps, and then he gets the green flag. So Robbie Gordon will use all the groove here. Eddie Cheever actually hit the wall during his qualifying run earlier today. That's the amount of road he used. But Gordon is safe and clear, and you can see his turn 4 exit speed, 216 miles an hour.
The race is on, of course, for top rookie in the field. Front stretch speed of 227. First lap at 220.486.
Great run, first lap for Robbie Gordon. Now he needs to maintain the consistency. Remember, 1 lap is no good here. You have to string together 4 full fast laps.
And the veterans, the men who have run so many more laps here than Gordon, say that with the changes in the car, with reduced aerodynamic downforce, and with the changes we talked about in the safety apron, getting 4 consistent laps has been much more difficult than in the past.
Okay, watch this. Turn 4 exit is a mile an hour down. He's down to 215 miles an hour. Will it make a difference? Yes, it does. He's down to 219.9 miles an hour.
That could very well mean that in the race to be the fastest rookie, that suddenly Gordon is the underdog. Remember that Stéphane Grégoire, the unknown Frenchman, came here 40 seconds to spare last Sunday afternoon. He got onto the racetrack to be the final day qualifier and ran 220.851. That is the rookie speed to beat. I don't think that's in Robbie Gordon's mind right now. He wants to get it safely in the show.
And look at this. The speed drops down again. That's it. It's over. They didn't take it. There was problems there. It got slower and slower. A.J. either waved it off or Robbie Gordon called off the attempt himself. He was down to a low of 207 miles an hour. So we said it after lap 1. Consistency is the key to qualifying here. 1 fast lap at 220 is useless.
Well, I wonder what A.J.'s mood is right now. I don't know if I'd want to be Robbie Gordon. I don't know if I'd want to be the guy who has to come in and face A.J., although this has to be mechanical, don't you think?
Yes, I think so. And also it will give an indication as to how these cars change, and they still have time to go back. But what does John Andretti now do? He has just seen Robbie Gordon's problems. Now he has to make a decision as to what he'll do.
Let's go to Jerry Punch. Jerry?
Well, guys, I was standing with the crew a minute ago, A.J. Foyt's crew for Robbie Gordon, when he came by, and they were applauding the second lap, and then suddenly they all grabbed their headsets and said, "What? We can't be out of fuel. We can't be out of fuel." Apparently, Robbie said the car began to skip down the backstretch in the second lap, and he shut it down, apparently, and will call it off and have to go again. Guys?
Oh, but I hate to be on A.J.'s crew right now.
I wouldn't want to say that too publicly. Let's hope that there is fuel in there and the fuel pump can't pick it up. Because if he doesn't have enough fuel in that car, he may not have enough in John Andretti's car.
You heard John say they put in 20. Let's listen.
Check the fuel. He said the fuel pressure. Let me see.
You can hear A.J. say fuel pressure. Yeah. He said get some fuel. He lost fuel pressure.
And that's all he said, too. He didn't have any interest at all.
Robbie, what happened?
I guess we miscalculated our fuel qualifying.
Started to cut out, fuel pressure went down?
Yeah, fuel pressure alarm came on.
Think you'll have another shot?
Well, it's not a disaster. It's not a disaster for Robbie Gordon. It's not 5 o'clock yet. He can still go back, get fuel, put his car back in line. But remember, he's got to go through the line and tech inspection again. What a frustration for Robbie Gordon.
That decision to go early, to not wait until the final hour, may prove to be the best decision that A.J. and Robbie ever made. They bought themselves a half hour, and now John Andretti thinks, gee, Now, believe me, John, they put enough fuel in the car. I got to believe that was mechanical. The fuel pressure light came on. He was either out of fuel or there was a mechanical problem. In any case, the run is over for Robbie. And now John Andretti, who looks pretty cool, calm, and collected, will prepare to take his next shot. He's not yet in the car. It'll be a few moments. His car is rolling up into tech. And A.J. Foyt, shaking his head, said, I don't know, maybe I ought to get back in the driving business. This car ownership drives me crazy. We'll be right back.
And you're looking live at John Andretti getting set to be the next driver to attempt to qualify here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The 30-year-old driver trying to make it in his 6th start at Indianapolis, coming off 2 consecutive top 10 finishes. It is A.J. Foyt's Copenhagen 1992 Lola Ford that he will be climbing aboard. Now, he told me this morning we were waiting to talk to A.J. at the opening of the show. He said, this man is miraculous. You come in with a small problem, A.J. makes a minor adjustment, and the car gets quicker and quicker. Now, a little bit ago, A.J. decided to change the gearing in both this car and the Robbie Gordon car. He said, I'm going to pour the gear to it, Doc. We're going to twist these Ford motors, but we're going to go quick in the afternoon when it comes time to qualify.
A couple of salty old dogs having a chat right there. Dick Simon on the left and A.J. pondering what has just happened to A.J.'s young hero and awaiting the next A.J. hero.
And it's Dick that's scratching his head. However, he needn't, because A.J. doesn't have any cars in the race, and Dick Simon has 5 cars from his stable already safely qualified.
Maybe he's given A.J. a few tips, you reckon?
I don't think there's many people would dare try and give A.J. a few tips.
John Andretti, a late marriage here as John joins the Foyt team here as teammate to Robbie and attempts to put it into the show. Here's a young man who comes along with typical old-fashioned Indy credentials. He started out driving sprint cars, just like Uncle Mario and his pop Aldo. This is back in 1987 at Ascot Park, which of course was the hotbed of sprint car racing till that famed old raceway was bulldozed. That's an Agajanian-sponsored car. Versatile young man, co-winner of the 24 Hours of Daytona in 1989 with Derek Bell and Bob Wallach, and that's Derek drowning John Andretti. Wallach says, I want no part of this, kid. Then, of course, his first and only IndyCar victory. That came last year at Surfers Paradise. It was not enough to keep this team together. And so this year, amazingly enough, John Andretti found himself at the wheel of a top fuel dragster. And as we said, went out and beat Joe Amato, the 4-time world champion, in his very first appearance. Now he's back on more familiar turf. As Doc mentioned, 2 top 10 finishes in the last 2 years. He was 8th last year, 5th the year before. Now the question is, can he put her in the show?
Well, yes, we know he does have the speed. All he needs is the reliability. But John Andretti's career managed by Kerry Agajanian, one of the great names from Indianapolis. Of course, his dad's so famous here. They had lengthy discussions with John Menard about John possibly driving one of the Menard cars. However, that came to nothing. And John now is in the black of A.J. Foyt.
It is a brand new experience for Mr. Foyt as he watches his cars try to qualify for what would have been his 36th Indy 500. We'll be right back. The Goodyear blimp, Spirit, floating across Indianapolis Motor Speedway, always a sign that there's big league action happening down on the ground. The aerial views being provided by this ship, which came in from its home base in Akron and will stay over the week and provide ESPN more aerial shots during our coverage of the 500 next week. And at the moment, the story down there on that 2.5-mile oval is the final attempt to qualify. 53 cars thus far have been presented at the line. Actually, 51 of those 53 made qualifying attempts. 30 are in the show, including 6 rookie drivers at an average speed of 219.368. That speed is down from a year ago because of changes in the aerodynamic downforce of the cars and because they've taken away the safety apron, forcing them to run a somewhat sharper turn line through the 4 corners. The man you're watching live is John Andretti. I'm curious about this fuel matter. How much fuel do these cars burn?
Well, I hope he has enough in this. An Indy car does about 1.8 miles to the gallon. Contrast that to a Formula One car that uses gasoline. It will do 5 miles to the gallon. And you saw the top fuel dragster that John drives. It does 12 gallons to the mile.
12 gallons to the mile. That's the other way around. This is Andretti on his warm-up lap. Let's get more from Jan Bikus.
To give you the specifics on how much fuel they're carrying, they will do anywhere from 9 to 12 gallons for the actual run. The crew chiefs feel that 9 gallons is cutting it a bit close. Most will run about 10 or 11. Well, why wouldn't you just fill it up? Well, methanol weighs almost 8 pounds per gallon. Therefore, the cars run quicker if they're lighter. So they'll only put in just enough fuel to make the run. I would tend to say that what happened with the last car of Foyt's, when we had Robbie Gordon out there, it wasn't that they didn't put enough fuel in, but that it didn't pick all of it up, so he left some in the tank. Guys?
I'd go with that. I don't think I think it's very unlikely that car ran out of fuel. You heard John say they put 20 gallons in.
Well, if that is what happened, they can be glad it happened during the qualifying run, because if that happens during the race, they will not obviously pick up that critical last few gallons, which means they will have probably 8 or 9 pit stops as opposed to the normal 7.
We have an update now that the computer, the onboard computer, which has since been downloaded, indicates that there was plenty of fuel in the car, and that would seem to confirm what John has said. John Andretti takes the green flag and heads off to turn 1 on a 4-lap qualifying attempt. You're watching it live here on ESPN.
Whoa, John just did a 223-mile-an-hour lap. That's his wife, Nancy. A great opening lap by John Andretti. Everybody here in the grandstands just gave him a round of applause. Now, the speed exiting the North Chute was 217 miles an hour. To be quick on a lap here, you must go through the corners very quickly. Now, let's have a look at the North Chute time here. It's down 1 mile an hour, so let's see what his lap time is. It's down 1 mile an hour.
Ready for the speed to come on the computer, and yeah, that translated, didn't it?
It did. 221. Still a spectacular run by John Andretti. 221.2. That averages out at about 222. He needs 2 more laps. 2 is not enough.
Bear in mind that 223, that first lap, is equivalent to the outside of the front row. Raul Boesel qualified at a 4-lap average of 222.3. So Andretti is very fast, but he will start among the 4th-day qualifiers. The best he could be was in row 10.
Okay, this is 2:16, which is up a little bit. Let's wait and see what the lap time is. No, it's not. It's down a little bit, but he's okay. He's now into the 220-mile-an-hour range, 220.8. Still a great run for John Andretti, who is a new dad since he was here last year.
Andretti now on lap 3, or having completed lap 3 of his qualifying run, coming to the checkered flag. It is the 4-lap average that puts you in the show. But if you're a day 3 qualifier, you cannot start the race in front of any day 2 or day 1 qualifier. And so Andretti may have a very fast car, very deep in the field. The checkered flag falls.
And his mother is delighted. Nancy is delighted. Remember, the whole family comes here to cheer John on. His last lap, he did pick it up. It was 221.8 miles an hour. But there's Kerry Agajanian, his manager, just delighted that they actually got this run in, and it was nice and safe.
Let's go to Jan Beekes with A.J. Foyt.
AJ, a roller coaster of emotions. First a fuel problem, and now blazing speed.
Well, we made a mistake and just had not enough fuel on the other car. We're going out. I'm just happy what John did. We'll get the other one in.
Well, he says indeed that they didn't have enough fuel, although again, the indication from the computer download was that the car did have fuel. I would suspect we may never know the correct answer to that question. That is, ladies and gentlemen, the 6th fastest speed average of the month. A great run for John Andretti.
And Aldo Andretti, his dad, gets a hug from one of the crew members. The newspapers and television stations locally here have been full of stories all week about John Andretti, how good he is, and will he get a ride to get into this race. And here's the result right here.
Outside row 9 will be the starting position for John Andretti, unless somebody comes up with a really terrific qualifying run here, as that one was. I believe that only 3 drivers, in fact, had a faster single qualifying lap. In other words, that was the 4th fastest qualifying lap of the entire 3 days here. Those 3 drivers were Lion Dyke, Mario Andretti, John's uncle, and Scott Goodyear. Just a great effort. The proverbial chips down and coming through at the big moment.
And here's when the crew members get to share in some of the enjoyment of their works, because they join John in the official qualifying photo which is part of the character and the history of what goes on here after you qualify at Indianapolis.
The shot is live from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. John Andretti coming out of the car, and we'll find out what he has to say. I'll bet the smile on his face is going to compare with the one we saw a moment ago from A.J. I wondered if A.J. was going to finally crack a smile there when Jerry got it out of him. Let's see if we can get in there and have a word with John Andretti. He looks pretty, there it is.
That's it. That's it. The emotion finally comes out. Nancy gives him a big hug. The amazing thing is he has had so few laps in this racing car, and yet he comes out and sticks it in the field. A tremendous run for John Andretti.
Hey, Doc, see what he has to say down there.
Well, he's not excited at all. A big smile, and here's A.J. down to congratulate John Andretti, give him a big hug and a pat, and hey, man, what some words of encouragement as everyone is. John, congratulations on an outstanding qualifying effort.
Well, I just can't say how much I appreciate Derek Walker being able to help me out at the beginning, and then AJ came along there, and it's sort of final hour, and this Copenhagen Ford is just great, and I had a lot of help this month and a lot of support this month, and I hope that I can get back into Indy cars full time, but certainly I'm back in my 6,500 and a very good car, and I couldn't be any happier.
Very emotional. This is some vindication after the great runs you've had the past couple of years here, to be able to get back and show people what you can do in an Indy car.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's always tough to be competitive in Indy cars, and it's always hard to find the problem or the solution, and I like to think that maybe I can help a team more than anything else, and this month has just been a lot of real lows, but a lot of real highs, and I feel like I just qualified for my first 500.
Good things happen to good people. Congratulations.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
John Andretti in
He
the
has
field.
ridden the emotional roller coaster of the last year very, very gracefully, and today John is right up at the very peak. And look who's back on the racetrack. Robbie Gordon will qualify when we come back. We're back at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Robbie Gordon, moments ago, running out of fuel or perhaps experiencing a fuel pickup problem, now making his qualifying attempt under the watchful eye of A.J. Foyt. And talk about putting pressure on the kid. John Andretti just showed us what the cars are capable of.
That is right. 222 miles an hour was the fastest Robbie Gordon ever squeezed out of this car. But in qualifying, sometimes you can stretch a little bit more. And it's good. It's 222.563 miles per hour. So Robbie Gordon now giving A.J.'s second car the type of ride it needs.
Now, kid, keep it out of the fence. Stay cool. Mind your business. I suspect that he has probably learned month of May up to that point.
Okay, North Chute, exit 215, little bit lower than we saw from John Andretti, so that may drop the speed down slightly. Yes, it does. 221.6. Still a good run, though. He's only halfway through. He's only got 2 laps.
You know that he's getting into the corner at 227 on the Tag Heuer speed clock. That gives you an idea, or speed trap, I should say. That gives you an idea the lift that they now have to make. They've really got to get out of that throttle, scrub some speed to safely get through these corners. This is another good qualifying run.
Good run. The rumble strips are... Oh, he's on the rumble strips. He actually drove over the rumble strips right there. They're just inside that white line. Now, you can drive across them. They make an incredible racket, but they actually don't upset the cars. Turn 4 exit 215. That, in fact, is a little bit slower again. Oh, he's in trouble. 216.1. This is decision time now for A.J.
Of course, Foyt has the option of waving this one off as well. Big drop in speed there, some 5.5 miles an hour for Robbie Gordon. It looks like what happened before. That would be disastrous.
Yeah, if this is a good lap, now remember, A.J. Foyt will measure this lap as he sees him in turn 4 before he comes to the checkered flag. He will know then whether it's good enough or not. It probably is good enough.
Yeah, they're going to take it. The checkered flag falls. The yellow did not come out from A.J. Foyt, standing down inside turn 4. And the last lap was right back up to snuff at 220.167. So in short order, A.J. puts 2 cars in the show in fine fashion. I didn't see anything that accounted for a 5-mile-an-hour drop in speed on that third lap.
You couldn't see it that clearly, but obviously Gordon sensed something was wrong, had to roll out of the power. When you roll out of the power on a lap like this, you lose a tremendous amount of momentum. Momentum is the key to speed here, to keep that momentum up. So you can see the third lap was bad. However, 220-plus miles an hour for the average.
Let's go to Jan Bekus, trackside.
A.J. Foyt is making his way over to the USAC golf cart where he will be riding back, but he wants to wait for Robbie Gordon. Normally he'd be on the way back. He wants to wait right here to give him the thumbs up. He does. A.J., any idea why you lost the speed on that one lap?
I'm sorry?
Any idea why you lost?
Well, he must just lost the front end a little bit, but we just had to get him in, that's all. Thank you.
As another machine...
AJ getting a lot of airtime here.
Yeah, the front end, what he means by that is the car, when he arrives down to the corner and turns it down to the apex, when you lose the front end, you get push or you get understeer. It understeers out of the groove up towards the wall. Now, last year you had another groove below that you could sometimes drive around it. This year, you have no option but to get out of the power. That loses you the time. That must be what A.J. talks about when he said he lost the front end.
Push was the very problem he had earlier this month. This is Mark Smith. No driver named Smith has ever made the 500. This is the man who is about to sit on the bubble. Jan Bekus.
He is the man on the bubble, and you were only feet away from watching A.J. Foyt's two cars turn that kind of speed. What sort of emotion goes through? You have another car that you can make an attempt on. Are you going to wait till you're bumped to do another attempt?
We're in line right now, Jan, and all we can do is fight and battle as hard as we can up till the end. We've got 3 attempts, and I think we're going to have to turn 4-lap average of 217 plus to get it done. So, now it's what it's all about, and just got to get after it.
For the man waiting for the greatest spectacle in racing, a very calm attitude. Guys?
Mark Smith out of McMinnville, Oregon, Bachelor of Science graduate from the University of Oregon, is the man who becomes the focal point here. Here is the moment in which it almost got away from Robbie Gordon. He gathered it back up and put it in the show. Derek Daly calls it Bubble Day. The rest of us refer to it as Bubble Day, and it'll happen tomorrow, the final day of qualifying for the Indy 500. We'll be here to cover it for you live from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And this old racetrack has just seen a couple of very impressive performances. Your qualified rookie list now includes Johansson, Mansell, Piquet, Smith, Gregoire, Grouillard, and add Robbie Gordon, having just turned a very impressive lap here.
And who'd have thought that you'd see Johansson, Mansell, and Piquet as rookie lists here at Indianapolis, almost like a Formula One race.
And for the moment, playing second fiddle to this man, Robbie Gordon, standing by with Dr. Jerry Punch.
Robbie, take a deep breath now. It's over with. You had 3 good laps, and on the third one, a little bit of a problem. What happened?
We had a good set of tires the first time, and the guys ran me out of fuel. I guess a big miscalculation. We're trying to do too many things at one time, but this is something I've always wanted to do, race the Indianapolis 500. Our 220 should definitely put us in the show. I just want to thank Copenhagen, Ford, all our sponsors, all my friends that helped me get to Indianapolis, Michael Kranifus from Ford, Lee Morris, everybody there, the Roush people, everybody that helped me climb up the ladder. I just want to thank them, and this is something I want to do, and we're finally here, and I think 220 will hold in the show. I want to say hi to all my friends back in California.
What is it like driving for a legend, A.J. Foyt?
It's tough. He does know how to get around Indianapolis, and we do have good cars, but, I think we'll be okay. I think we just get everything mellowed out the next couple days, and we'll go and race the race next Sunday.
Best of luck to you. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
That little push that he developed in that qualifying lap is not new. That is the very push that sent him into the wall 3 times. And what's different is he now knows how to deal with it.
That's right. Notice that Robbie Gordon is definitely becoming a professional racing driver, because instead of answering the question, he goes the corporate route and thanks all his sponsors and all his friends. He's definitely been to the corporate school of how to answer racing questions.
As Rocky Moran takes to the racetrack for his qualifying effort, I would only add to that the fact that he answered the key question very honestly. What's it like to drive for AJ? It's tough. The green flag is out for Moran, and here's a run that certainly lacks the buildup of the 2 that we've seen thus far, because Rocky is in a a car that has shown very little potential to make this 500-mile race.
It has been an uphill battle for Rocky Moran since the first day he stepped in this car. He's very big. He's well over 6 feet. He has an extension on the windshield. He sits up high in the car. He has not, I think 212 is the best I've seen this car go. It's a locally based team here run by Dennis McCormack. Very experienced here, but very difficult to extract enough speed out of these cars. They are Buick V6 powered cars, but this year the Buick needs lots and lots of downforce to be fast. And the regulations and the rule changes for the cars this year has taken away some of that critical and valuable and necessary downforce.
He didn't find 212, 211.3 on the first lap. Let's talk about the changing fortunes of Buick, because those who may have missed the first couple of days of qualifying and remember last year when the Buicks were so bullet fast, they've always been fast in qualifying here. What's changed this year?
Well, I think the biggest change is there is no factory support anymore for this Buick engine. And once the manufacturer pulls out from the development program, you have to ask yourself a question: is it worthwhile going on with this Buick engine package? They do have more horsepower, but they're not reliable, and they were never reliable in the past. So it's now a difficult question for the smaller teams to answer whether they need to have Buick engines and Chevrolet engines or Ford engines should they contest the rest of the PPG IndyCar World Series. So from my mind, unless the manufacturer comes back, this program will suffer and will cease.
Give Rocky Moran this. He is consistent, 211.5, up a couple of tenths of a mile an hour. The Buick program does live on, of course. John Menard sort of took that program under his wing and has put 2 cars in the show, and we would anticipate that we'll see an effort to put a 3rd car in when Jeff Brabham takes to the racetrack in a little bit.
Yeah, there's Dennis McCormack. He waves the yellow flag. He knew that was no good. It was a waste of time, really, to let him run any longer. We saw his exit speed was 205 miles an hour. That was a full 10 miles an hour slower than Robbie Gordon or John Andretti.
Rocky Moran, the former sports car racer, in a car that John Morton used to pass his rookie orientation test, didn't have enough money to go the rest of the month. We'll be back with more from Indy in a moment. We're back live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Davy Jones is on the track. It's been a month of catch-up for Jones after an early crash nearly sent them home. They got some help from Bobby Rahal's team, put the car back together, and now they are really under the gun. Final qualifying attempt.
And of course, this is one of Bobby Rahal's cars from last year. And you're right, Davy Jones hit the wall. It took 38 straight hours to repair the damage from the first crash. And of course, during a second qualifying attempt, the engine blew up. All the hot water came into the driver's seat. He tried to jump out, of course, as soon as he took the steering wheel off. You'll remember the car turned sharp left and hit the wall again. But a multitude of sponsors here that are new, or some of them are new to IndyCar racing. Adjip, of course, the famous Italian oil company. We've seen that many times. Hawaiian Tropic and Andrea Moda. Remember that name from Formula One? Tried to run a team, however, it was very unsuccessful the last couple of years. Now comes to IndyCar racing. And Can Balance is something very new that Davy Jones has brought to the Speedway, a new balancing device, which I saw the videotape and it looks spectacular. However, they wouldn't tell me how it works.
It's a secret. He's off turn 4, and on the green, Davy Jones, a young man who came up as a teenager with a terrific build-up, runs a 217. First lap, not far off his best of the month.
And 217, he has run as high as 219 and was very consistently able to run a 219. Lee Dykstra is the engineer on this team. He's come here just for the month of May to help Davy Jones with Euro Motorsports, so he will look definitely for a higher speed to get a consistent, a higher average for this 4 laps.
Been a lot of talk about where Davy Jones' career might go. He's had the Walkinshaw connection, racing the Jags in the IMSA series. There was talk he might go to Formula One. His wife looking on and watching the watch and saying, yeah, that's better. 218.845. Remember, with two qualifying attempts in the book, this is do or die. If Jones has bad luck in the last 2 laps, he won't make the show.
Oh, he won't make it. Just think of a small mechanical failure that could happen. Something very simple could actually eliminate this car, because he is on effort number 3, or try number 3, but he's looking good. Above 218 miles an hour average at the moment, but he's using more of the racetrack. See that? Below that critical white line.
But doesn't compare with a week ago when he was down on the rumble strip all the way through the corners and was out grazing the wall on his first qualifying run. And despite the fact that he had the hair up on everybody's neck, he was about 4 or 5 miles off the pace. This time he's a lot more solid. I think he's going to make the show.
Looks good so far. 218 plus for the third lap. Davey has probably driven more different disciplines of racing car this year than anybody else. He's driven Formula One for Benetton in a test program. He drove a Busch Grand National car at Darlington. Of course, the IMSA GTP car. He does the IROC series. And now as we watch Mary Elizabeth again hold her breath for this last lap. But Davy Jones' Indy cars are the 5th different type of racing car he's driven this year.
Pretty remarkable
celebration.
Season. And there's the celebration indeed. He's made it safely, and we would estimate he's probably going to be outside row 10. We wait for it to be official. 218.4 is the 4-lap average, and Davy Jones is safely in the show in 30th starting spot. And Davy Jones' car owner is standing by with Jan Bikas.
Antonio Ferrari, you have put your car in, but on the last attempt, what a last lap that was.
Has been unbelievable. We worked so good all together, and these 2 weeks we have been unlucky for 2 attempts. We was fast from the beginning. We just wish this. It's been a great job from Davey, from the crew, from the sponsor, everybody all together. It's 1 year. Last year I lost Jovi Marcello here. It was very bad moment for over. We stayed together. We keep going. Thank you to everybody, and we will see in the race. But it's a great moment come true right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Antonio.
You can even hear the emotion. Look at this here. You can hear the emotion in Antonio Ferrari's voice that Davy Jones made it. How expensive is racing? $240,000 it cost to repair the damage earlier.
The field is full. The bumping begins when we come back. We're live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where Mark Smith of McMinnville, Oregon, is now on the bubble. He is the slowest of 33 qualified drivers for the Indy 500. The man you're watching live is Jeff Brabham, who wants nothing more than to put Mark Smith on the sidelines. The bumping starts here, and with Mark Smith at 2:14, certainly Brabham is in good shape to give him a boot.
And certainly after Brabham's first lap, he is in very good shape. 218.9 miles an hour, almost 219. Now, Mark Smith, he is on the bubble. He took a gamble last weekend by taking a 214. The reason he took the gamble, he does have another car. It is in line. But I think even Mark is doubtful whether that car can actually go fast enough to get back in this race.
Brabham comes down to complete lap 2 as you watch it live. The speed to beat to make the show right now, 214. The next bumpable speed is 216.4. So Brabham wants all he can get, and he got 217.691 on the second lap. He's all right.
Good enough. Everything is safe so far. 220 miles an hour this morning. Then the engine blew up, sent everybody back to the garages to stick another Buick V6 in this. They've had a lot of unreliability problems, but John Menard already has 2 cars in the field, Nelson Piquet and Gary Bettenhausen. Jeff is off the North Chute at 212. That is dropping down a bit. Let's see what his average is for that lap.
We'll see what that does to the lap average. Again, if you just joined us, the garages are where they keep the cars. The bubble is where you sit if you're not fast enough. 216.9 on that third lap and dropping off steadily. 218, 217, and now just into the 216 bracket. Again, he needs a solid 217, 218 to be safe.
He is safe. I think he is safe. Unless this is a disaster coming through 3 and 4, we can get an indication by the exit speed off turn 4. He's in turn 4 now. You see he enters 3, the North Chute at 215. What's the exit speed? The exit speed's the key. Oh, 212. It dropped down again. This will be a slower lap.
Checkered flag falls. Brabham has completed his attempt. The third Menard car is in the show. The average is 217.800.
Well, we're not perfect. It wasn't that much slower. It was, in fact, a little bit bigger, but he is safely, very safely in the field at a high 217.
He's outside row 10. Mark Smith has been bumped, and Dr. Jerry Punch is standing by with Davy Jones.
Davy Jones, 218.4 miles per hour. Third time had to be the charm. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. You know, Doc, it's been a long 2 weeks. The car is, it's an old car. It's a 92 with a Chevy A. We're down a little bit on horsepower, but every time, you know, it could run a good 19 on a good lap, and every time things went for the positive side of us, some snake grabbed up and bit us. So it's just nice. This was our third and final attempt for this car, and I hadn't been in it since this morning, so it was just kind of go out and do it, and it had a bit of push to it. You know, there's a few moments, but I hung in there.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Jones qualifying in the middle of row 10, right alongside Jeff Brabham. Today's qualifiers are Robbie Gordon, Hiro Matsushita, Davy Jones, Jeff Brabham, Jim Crawford, Olivier Grouillard, and Eddie Cheever. And the man now on the bubble is Cheever. Smith has been bumped. We made the point that the car and not the driver qualifies, and so for Mark Smith, he cannot get back in the car that he already timed with and try it again. He's got to get in the backup car. The question is whether or not that car will have the speed. The field is full, and the bumping has begun, and Eddie Cheever's 216.415, that's the car, the driver, and speed on the hot seat. Speed World coverage of qualifying for the Indy 500 has been brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil.
41-year-old Jeff Brabham solidly in the field at 217.8 miles per hour. Jeffrey, your first attempt was a good one, but it slowed up a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, we've had a tough day today. We came out this morning, ran 220 really easy, and then we blew the engine up, and the guys really did a fantastic job getting the engine back, but unfortunately we didn't really run enough to you know, really dial the car in for the conditions. So in my run I had quite a bad push, which slowed me down, but you know, we just wanted to get in the race, and I think that's what we've done. Now we can sort those problems out for the race.
Congratulations.
Okay, thanks.
John Paul on the racetrack, guys, to make his attempt to qualify, his second one of the day.
You're watching live from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. John Paul spun here in practice a week ago. Waved off an attempt. His best lap of the month is 2:18.9, and if he could string a few of those together, he would certainly be safe. The bump speed right now is 216.415. Eddie Cheever, who coincidentally, and only coincidentally, sits in 33rd spot. It's not necessarily the 33rd guy who gets bumped. It's the slowest car in the field, and Mark Smith was a second-day qualifier, so he was bumped out of what was it, row 8, I believe, or row 9. Everybody else has moved up. That puts Cheever in the 33rd spot, and 216 is the speed to beat. Paul got that much left, you think?
Well, I don't know, but if he has it, he better produce it right here, because his back is against the wall. He's running out of time. He knows the speed he needs to do. It's been in this car during the 2 weeks here, but he hasn't been able to get it out of the car on a consistent basis. And his first lap is not good. It is no good. 213.351 miles per hour. So John Paul is in trouble unless he brings that up tremendously on the second lap, which I've never seen happen here before, that you bring it up that much more on lap 2. But this is only attempt number 1 for John Paul, so he does have another day.
I appreciate the correction on that, because indeed he did not make an attempt after that spin last Sunday. He was in line at the end of the day. They have waved this one off. They see that 213 and know that that will not get them in the show. They now have to rush. There's a half hour, give or take, left in today's qualifying, and an 80% chance of rain tomorrow. John Paul Jr. goes to the back of the line as the drama continues here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Eddie Cheever will continue to chew his nails and wonder if someone has more than 216.4 in their pocket. If so, he'll be bumped. This is John Paul Jr. unstrapping after an unsuccessful effort. The slowest qualified cars, Eddie Cheever 216.4, Olivier Grouillard at 216.5, Scott Pruitt 216.7. We mentioned at the top of the show big names who might be in danger. The national champion, Bobby Rahal, 217.1 is the fourth slowest qualified car. Kevin Cogan's 217.2 is fifth on that list. That is the order in which those drivers would be bumped if there were enough successful cars out yet today.
And here is the true test for Mark Smith. Can he bring himself and rise to the occasion? Brand new tires on this Penske car. This is one of last year's Penske's. with the B version Chevrolet engine. Just got knocked out of the Indy 500. How many times have we seen this where a car gets bumped out, they have another one in line, and they get back in the race? But Mark Smith has a tall order now to drag this car around at an average better than 216.4. But you're absolutely right. Eddie Cheever, I guarantee you, is watching every inch of the move of the run of Mark Smith and biting his nails.
Smith, the former Super V champion, an observation on his efforts from Jan Bikus.
One of the things you have to keep in mind is that Eddie Cheever is the one who will be bumped. These are two identical cars. They're both 92 Penske's. So it's not just the fact that they're dicing for that position, it's that they have the very same cars that a lot of people have had problems with the 93 regulations and a 92 Penske, that in fact those cars have had difficulty getting up to speed.
They have, of course, the teams with 92 and older cars have been forced to modify those cars to meet the new downforce regulations. The best speed for the T car, as it's known, IndyCar terminology for the backup, 218.3. So that's what Smith has done thus far this month in this car. The car that he qualified for the show last week averaged 214.3. So the T car perhaps has that speed potential.
And Mark Smith, during the week here, has run very, very close to the wall many, many times. Brushed the wall last weekend during one of his practice laps. This is a new team set up by Frank Arciero, now based back out in California, run by Mark Wyda, backed by Sears Craftsman Tools. Well, they better hope that those tools have done an exceptional job, because if they can squeeze enough time out of this car, you will see a whale of a celebration down on pit lane.
Arciero, of course, big name, veteran car owner of many, many years. And Mark Smith, his driver, now making his qualifying attempt, 216.862 on the first lap. If he can maintain that, he'll bump Eddie Cheever.
That's good enough. That is only just good enough, though, by 0.4 of a mile an hour. Mark Smith needs to pick the pace up a little bit if he's to really challenge Cheever. He's halfway through his second lap.
Consistency has been the hardest thing, not just for rookies, but for all the drivers to find all month. Mark Smith needs consistency now more than anything else.
Guarantee you his heartbeat is racing right now. Just finishes the second lap. It needs to be a bit quicker. Oh, it is. It is. 217. Oh, Cheever, bite your nails. 217.2.
Cheever, run for the backup car. You're in deep trouble. 217.2. The bump speed, 216.4. Buddy Lazier is in tech. Didier Taze is also there. Qualifying efforts still to come as the bumping is on at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and this young graduate of the Super V and Indy Lights competition is en route to what could very well be his first Indy 500 start. 217.2 the second lap. Let's see how it compares as he comes down to take the white flag, indicating the final of 4 laps about to begin.
Consistency is what he needs. Oh, it's still good enough. It is still good enough. 216.9. He is averaging over 217 miles an hour as he runs now. He absolutely needs this last lap to be fast, to be consistent. Don't make a mistake, and he will qualify for this Indianapolis 500.
Well, he's a former Eagle Scout, so you know the motto, be prepared. He needed the entire month to get to this moment. Half a lap to put the car in the show. Off turn 4, down for the checkered flag. And there's the big wave from the crew. They think they've done it. The first 3 laps quicker than Cheever's. Applause all around.
He made it.
Lap at 217.
He made it.
At an average of 217.150. Eddie Cheever has been bumped, and Mark Smith now occupies the middle of row 11. Another great rookie performance. Let's go to Jan Bikus.
Mark Wyda, the celebrations taking place here. Mark Wyda, the crew chief. Well, you did it. That was close.
Man, I'll tell you what, makes your heart beat. I'll tell you what, gets your heart rate up. I think it's a good diet for me. Burn some calories.
Now, this is the duel of the 92 Penske's. We were just talking about the fact that you just bumped Eddie Cheever, who's out there trying to get his 92 Penske. Yeah, this is quite a battle with these cars.
Well, it sure is. I hate it to be this close for this far back in the grid, but I'll tell you what, we got a couple guys behind us. We got our fingers crossed. We're praying for rain tomorrow.
Well, Well, that is the forecast. So as we see, Mark Smith went right behind us. Also, he was very, very calm before he went out. We spoke with him when he was on the bubble. Very relaxed.
Well, you know, he's 25 years old, but he's a cool head, you know, and I mean, he's been racing since he was 8 years old, and, you know, he did a great job. Nothing else I can say.
Thank you, Mark.
You bet. Thank you.
His 15 years of racing experience served him well today. The rookie, Mark Smith, pulling out 4 consistent laps when he needed them, has bumped the veteran Eddie Cheever from the field. Mark Smith is in the show. Cheever still has work to do, and you see the bobble there from which Mark Smith saved it. We'll be right back. Sports Center is next, wrapping up all of the rest of the activity around the world of sports as we bring you this, the third of 4 scheduled days of qualifying for the Indy 500, a day marked by another great rookie performance. Mark Smith in the show. About this same time last Sunday, it was that French youngster, Stephane Gregoire, stealing the headline. Let's go trackside to Dr. Jerry Punch.
Well, they're hugging and kissing, and I don't think they're happy at all down here as Mark gets a big smile. Mark, congratulations, 2:17.150. You're solidly in the field this evening.
Yeah, just car works real well, and just try to tap those hidden reserves that you know you got inside of you in these situations. And I really want to thank my team and Craftsman and Evergreen for all the support and giving me the opportunity to be here. It's a childhood dream to be able to get into this race, and I really want to thank the team. They battled hard all week and really gave me a good car.
You said hidden reserves. Is that the difference from 214 to 217 and change, almost 3 miles an hour?
No, we had, we gave it everything we had when we ran those 214s in practice. We were doing 212s, but you just mentally, you just try to get yourself focused to put it together and just hang it out and take some risks. I mean, you got everything to gain and nothing to lose, so might as well stand on it.
And you gained it. Good luck to you.
Thanks.
History has been made. Can you believe that there's never been a driver named Smith in the Indy 500 field in 76 previous runnings? He keeps up with the Joneses. Look at all the Joneses that have made this show over the years, but this is the first Smith, and is he happy? Very emotional.
Very emotional. He mentioned Evergreen. Of course, Evergreen Aviation is their family corporation who recently bought the Spruce Goose from Long Beach and have moved it up to Oregon. It is now part of a major museum in Oregon.
Buddy Lazier is on the racetrack as the qualifying attempts continue here. The man on the bubble now is Grouillard, Olivier Grouillard, and perhaps you can give me a bit of information on the latest member of the French connection to come here.
Well, brings a wealth of experience with him, and a lot of it was from Formula One. Ex-Tyrrell, drove for Fun-Metal, drove for Osella, drove for the Ligier Formula One team at one stage. This is another locally based team here, run by Stalin Candela, who himself was ex-Brabham and McLaren, did Indy Lights last year. Struggled here to find the speed they needed, but they began to peak at the right time. Got up to as much as 220 miles an hour this morning, but dropped off a bit in the critical 4-lap run. 2:16.5 is the time that needs to be beaten by Buddy Lazier.
Lazier, in contrast, All-American racing credentials, came here from the Indy Light Series, and as he tries to outdo Grouillard in qualifying, his front stretch speed you see there at 221. The average to beat, 216.560. This is going to be close. 216.
Oh, he's off.
Ooh, he's in trouble.
Oh, he's off the road, loses it, coming out of turn 2, but again, thankfully, misses the wall. Hard to believe the number of cars that have spun. That's Bob Lazier, his dad. He owns the car, but it's hard to believe the number of cars that have lost control this month and did not actually hit the wall. His first lap was not good enough to beat Olivier Grouillard, but if he brought it up even a slight bit, he would have been a real threat. Let's go down to Jan Beekes.
Well, we're standing by with Bob Lazier, and we have good news for you, is that he did spin, but he didn't hit anything. That's the good part of that here at Indy.
That's very, very good news, yes.
Now, as far as did he radio as far as any loose condition or something that might have caused the spin?
I really don't know. I wasn't in contact with him by radio, so I was out on the line just watching for him.
You think you'll have time for another attempt yet?
Not today, but certainly tomorrow. Yeah, well, I mean, depending on weather. The weather now, we're going to be on the bubble like everyone else for tomorrow, but it appears the weather's going to be reasonably good tomorrow.
Thank you, Bob.
You bet.
You ask, is this car fast enough? In a minimum number of laps, he did a 219 miles an hour, which was last night. So yes, this car, which is a Buick engine 91 Lola, does have enough speed. Look what happened here. The car literally just gets loose midway on the exit, and luckily for Buddy Lazier, stays away from the wall. But look at the cloud of smoke as he destroys those 4 Goodyears spinning down the racetrack, and was blessed not to hit anything hard.
It is not an exact science, but it is fair to at least estimate that had we been on last year's racetrack, had he taken that low entrance line into the corner and lost the car at the same moment, the angle of attack would have sent him into the wall. Instead, he has left the black trail of snake-like skid marks, but he didn't hit anything. The car is secure.
So now, how long will it take to clean up this Buddy Lazier incident, and will Didier Thays, who was next in line, get an opportunity to qualify? And Willie T. Ribbs is in tech. He will go after Didier Thays, but only if there is enough time left.
Let's make it clear once again how the procedure works. At 6 o'clock, the gun will sound and the track will be closed. If a car is off the pit road and on the track, if he is left on a qualifying attempt, then he will be allowed to complete that attempt. And that's what happened last week with Stéphane Grégoire. The day 3 qualifiers all line up behind those in day 1 and 2. So the drivers qualifying here today actually begin lining up outside row 9. The field is now full. Bumping has begun. The slowest car in the field is bumped, and that is Grouillard at the moment. Eddie Cheever, who has just been bumped, is in his T car and will prepare to bump his way back into the field. It's all happening live at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Excitement and drama as Didier Thays waits for them to clean up the track. We'll be right back. John Moran at the controls. The Goodyear blimp hovers high over Indianapolis Motor Speedway, down from its home in Akron, Ohio, to bring you a portion of our ESPN coverage here. I think flat out the blimp will run, what, 35, 36 miles an hour. Compare that with Scott Goodyear's Tag Heuer trap speed, 233 miles an hour. That was the quickest anybody went down the backstretch last weekend during qualifying, and unlike a year ago when Scott Goodyear started out back 33rd in the field, he'll line up inside row 2 and has a good shot at winning his first Indy 500. There is the shot from the blimp. Let's go way, 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 way down there in the middle of that crowd of people and hear from Dr. Jerry Punch.
We're with John Menard, and John, you've already got 3 cars in the field, and I'm told you've got 2 very competitive cars sitting back in the garage area with the yet unnamed drivers. Will you consider putting a 4th or maybe even 5th car in the field tomorrow?
Well, we'll see what the weather's like tomorrow. The forecast is for rain, so if it rains all day, it's kind of that's that. Otherwise, we'll see what it looks like in the morning, see who's available, and see where we're at after the next few minutes. And we just might do it. We're kind of running a one-race season. We might as well have fun while we can. So
possibly a 5-car field for Menard in the Indy 500. Let's check in up the pit road with Jan Beekes. Jan?
We're standing by with the Series PPG champion. And Bobby, your car is now in tech, your spare car. What do you think your chances of being bumped are today?
Well, the longer they take, the better the worse the chances are. You know, the better they are for us. But if we get bumped, I mean, I've never been in this position before in a race, but this morning I ran almost 220 with this car in conditions very similar. So we'll just, have to do what we have to do.
Now, the news here during the month of May is that you have, in fact, purchased a Lola. When will we see you driving that car next?
Milwaukee will run that. We'll continue to develop this car, but away from the pressure of racing. Let's put it that way.
Now, do you feel this spare car has enough speed if you are bumped to get back in?
As I said, we ran 220 with it this morning, so I assume we can do it again. We'll see.
Thank you, Bobby.
Do I not recall, though, that they made that same assumption about a week ago? Not at 220, but about, 218 or so, and when the sun came out, the speed went away. Now, to reset the situation, Rahal is 3rd in the bump line. Grouillard, Pruitt, and Rahal are the next 3 drivers under the gun, and Grouillard's speed is 216.560. So that is the speed that it will require to bump back into the show at this point.
So we watch Didier Thays. The fastest he has squeezed out of this car all month here is a 218.9. That's almost 219 miles an hour. This morning he was out, did a 2:16.4. That is not good enough. He blew the engine up yesterday. This is Ron Hemmelgarn's car. Ron Hemmelgarn, just like John Menard, we heard from him earlier on, just compete in this one race here. So Didier Thays hopes to squeeze enough out of this Lola Buick. It is a V6 Buick. This is, in fact, a 92 Lola.
It's a car that he spun off turn 4 earlier in the month and backed into the wall pretty solidly. They have put the car back together again, and now Didier Thays will attempt to qualify for his third Indy 500. Actually finished the race at 11th spot in 1990, having come from 20th. Pretty competent race driver who now needs the best run of his Indy 500 efforts to get that car up to speed and into the show. It's real tough to take a car that hasn't shown that speed yet today. It doesn't really matter what you did early in the month. So many changes in the cars, so many changes in the track condition. It's what you did today that matters.
Exactly. Don't tell me how good you were or how good you think you could have gone. You have to do it. You have to perform right now. That is the problem. Didier Thays has had terrible luck here at the Speedway. Brought Kinko's as a sponsor last year to John Andretti's backup car and failed to make the show. Brought Kinko's back again this year and hopes to make the show. But 214.2 is his first lap. That is not quick enough for Didier Thays. He will have to bring this up considerably. Is this attempt number 1 or 2 on this car? I'm not sure.
I believe it's the first.
I believe it is the first attempt.
Yeah.
I believe it is the first attempt. So remember, if it's not fast enough, he'll have to depend on the weather because he won't get another chance today, but he can get another run tomorrow if the weather permits it.
We will be here live tomorrow from 4 until 6 o'clock local time. That's 5 to 7 Eastern time to cover whatever happens. The forecast is an 80% chance of rain. When it rains, they don't run. If the day washes out, the field will be set as of 6 o'clock this afternoon. Didier Thays recalls a year ago he made 3 qualifying attempts, couldn't get to speed on the first 2, had the speed on the third, and blew the engine. This time he's short. He's slower on the, check that, he's 2/10 faster on the second lap, but still about 2 miles an hour off the pace.
Wave it off, boys. This is only a waste of engine and methanol and tires and everything. This is not going to get the job done. No point even doing another lap.
Well, they're going to do another lap anyway. They're not paying the least bit of attention.
The turn 4 exit speed is what we've watched earlier. Ron Hemmelgarn knows it's not enough. He waves the yellow flag. He's going to have to go back and think things over again and see, can you make some changes and bring this car up to speed. But we saw the north turn exit speed was down to 207. Unless you're around 215 or 214, you will not run fast enough. As Willie T. Ribbs rolls the service merchandise car out onto the line. He has a lot of trouble, though, trying to get this car up to speed.
The Ribbs story in a moment. Let's hear from Ron Hemmelgarn with Jan Bekus.
Yes, we're standing by with Ron, the owner of Didier's car. Not the speed you'd hope for. Do you think you'll have a chance to get that speed up if the weather permits for tomorrow?
Well, I'm sure we will. The car's running 218.9s, 218.8s, and so on, so I'm sure we're going to get the speed back up. Obviously, the car was pushing because we was down in the rumble strip, so we just got to put it back in line and go for it again, make a minor adjustment and go for it again. The car for sure is fast enough to make the field. We just have to wait it out and go for it again.
Now, you live here, so you'd be the best person to ask about the weather. What's your call for tomorrow?
Well, you know, when you look at the radar, I think it's heading north. I don't think it's going to hit like they're predicting, but nobody knows for sure. Indianapolis is a city that can change from hour to hour, so nobody knows for sure, but I sort of think it's going to head north without hitting.
Well, if Ron Hemmelgarn is right, he'll be back out on the track tomorrow, guys.
That sounds like wishful thinking to me. I'm not sure that I would agree with that, but hey, I never wanted to be a TV weatherman. Willie Ribbs is on the racetrack. Remember the drama of 2 years ago, the last-ditch 11th hour effort to put the car in the show. He succeeded. He became the first black driver ever to race the Indy 500. He raced it for 5 laps before the engine exploded and he parked the car. The problem for Ribbs is right here, 216.951 miles per hour, his best run of the month.
Best run of the month, and he has done more than 3 full race distances here trying to get up to speed. This is one of the cars that John Andretti drove, but we saw the 207 exit speed at turn 4. That usually is not fast enough. that usually is not fast enough.
2:16.5 is what he needs. He needs to run within 0.4 of a mile an hour of the best speed that he's turned all month. There you see Gruyard's bump time, 2:16.560. He's the man on the bubble, and behind him live, you see the shot of Willie T. Ribbs trying to reach or exceed that speed. Scott Pruitt is next on the bubble, and then the uncharacteristic situation of Bobby Rahal, the national champion, sitting in a potential bubble spot.
Well, Willie T. Ribbs has to reach down and come up with something special here. He has to go fast.
Oh, he did, too.
Oh, he did. 217.2, faster than he has ever gone in this car all month. This is the time to perform. You need to dig deep and drag it out of the car right now if you're going to make this race.
Willie Ribbs, one of the most flamboyant, some would say one of the most controversial race drivers to come down the pike in a long, long time. Can't help but recall the wonderful story about Willie attending a driver's meeting at a Winston Cup race, and when it was all done, nonchalantly asking the question, well, can you pass in the grass? Willie needs everything in his kit today because he's got to maintain that 2:17.2. He's got less than 3/4 of a mile an hour cushion there to stay in the show.
And it is good enough. It is even faster on his second lap. It's almost 218 miles an hour. 2:17.9. Willie T is in the comfort zone as we speak, but he has 2 more laps to go.
There are the smiles of the crew saying, come on, Willie, we need a couple more laps of that, and we're in the middle of row 11 for the biggest show in motorsports. Ribbs, who has 5 laps of race experience here, hoping to get another shot. He heads into the final qualifying lap, having run 2 of them back-to-back at 2:17.2 and 2:17.9. He stays solid at 2:17.891. If he can do that one more lap, Willie Ribbs will bump Olivier Gruyard from the field and take the inside of row 11. He's actually picked up his average to 2:17.679.
Hold your breath, Willie T. You've only got 2 more corners. He's not down to the white line. That's a good sign. He doesn't go too high. If he gets cleanly through here, just touches the line, that is no problem. Willie T looks good. He's had such a frustrating time here all month trying to get some speed out of this car. And if that last lap was good enough, and it was, he's in, he made it.
Save it for when it matters. Ribbs runs 2:17.8 on the last lap, 2:17.7 for the average, and grabs the inside of row 11. Let's go to Derek Walker with Jan Vikas.
Yes, we stand by with the man that does have 3 drivers in the race now. You cut that one close. Well, we told our viewers earlier the tricks you had used to get your drivers up to speed. That really, your experience really counted.
Well, I don't know if it was tricks. We had a lot of help from the engineers and Scott and John Andretti. I mean, everybody pitched in, so it was a team effort.
Now, Willie T. Ribbs, this is the second time that he's not shown the speed until it came down to that qualifying attempt. You and I talked about it yesterday. He did it again. Where does he pull it out from?
Well, we call it the Willie factor. You know, it's that last 10% that we rely on drivers doing, but it'll be close. Just have to see what the weather does.
You don't feel pretty confident about being in? That's a good speed.
Well, it's a good speed, but having been here before, I'm not leaving anything to chance.
Thank you, Derek.
Well, he makes a couple of good points. One, ultimately, after you've done everything you can with setup and all the rest of it, it's up to the driver to do the business. And 2, if it doesn't rain tomorrow, this apple cart could be kicked right upside down. Here is Eddie Cheever back out. Hey, had to skip that golf game today. Almost grazes the wall. The pressure's on for Cheever.
Whoa, did you see Cheever right outside the groove, exiting that corner, gets the wheels right up against the wall. Cheever has kissed the walls here earlier this month. He will use every inch of racetrack that's available. Sometimes he even uses the wall if it'll help him. But this is Cheever's chance to try and get back in this race. There's the bubble speed, 216.794, which is Scott Pruitt.
The best speed for the T car for Cheever, his backup car, only 215.781. So this car needs its performance of the month if Cheever's going to get back in the show.
He's going to hit the wall. Did you see that? That was even higher, right out of the groove, almost against the wall. If Eddie Cheever doesn't put this car in the race, he's not going to bring it back to pit lane the way he's going now.
Cheever is definitely in serious trouble in terms of the handling on this car. This is the desperation that comes with the final lap of qualifying. He's using every bit of it. He is making some decisions here that are very, very scary, and he's having to make 4 of them a lap.
And look at the turn 4 exit, 212. That's usually a fairly good sign. And his first lap is 216.5. It's not good enough. It is not fast enough yet to get rid of Scott Pruitt. So Pruitt is still in this race. But Cheever, he can pick it up on the next couple of laps.
He's close. 216.7 is what he needs. 216.5 is what he has in hand. But I think the big concern for Cheever has got to be whether he can find that additional speed without finding a room at Riverside Hospital, because he is having to use every inch of Indianapolis Motor Speedway just to get to 216.5.
Turn 4 exit is down a little bit, 211. That's usually not a good sign, and the lap time is almost identical, but it is down just a tad. But the key, it's not fast enough. It is not good enough to put Cheever into this race.
Eddie Cheever started on the front row of the 1992 Indy 500. He was the lead driver for the team that this year sits on the pole. You spoke earlier of chemistry. The chemistry was not right. Cheever showed up at a racetrack and read a press release that said that he had been fired, and comes here this year, and comes so close to the wall, trying desperately to get back into the Indy 500. He has been bumped, and he's trying to bump back in.
Not a good sign. Look at that turn 4 exit. It's creeping down into the 209s. No good. 214, no good.
And there's the yellow.
Yeah, he's got 2 more attempts on this car, so wave this one off, and you better pray for good weather conditions tomorrow if Eddie Cheever has a legitimate and realistic chance of qualifying and getting himself back into this field.
Time is running out here for the 3rd day of qualifying. Willie T. Ribbs is in the show. Let's go to Jerry Punch.
And he stood up in the car, and the crowd went crazy, Willie. Willie, congratulations on an excellent run.
Jerry, I was here in 91, and it was great to qualify. And this year is just as great. We've been struggling all month. A lot of people have accused me of sandbagging, like 91, just going easy and then standing on it. But we weren't sandbagging. It was a real guess here because we didn't know what the car was going to do. It was loose. I'm on my last run. And, you know, Steve Erickson and Dr. Tim Wardrop and John Miller dialed some wing into it, and we said, let's go do it.
And race drivers respond to pressure, and you did. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sports Center will follow immediately. Willie Ribbs is in the show. All eyes are on the tower waiting for the firing of the gun that marks the closing of the racetrack. But it doesn't matter at this moment to Dominic Dobson, because he is on the track and therefore eligible to make this qualifying attempt. Trying to bump Pruitt from the show. 216.7 is the time to beat.
And Eddie Cheever has to withstand the pressure for one more night, because he gets to go home and think about what might have been if the car was quick enough, but what didn't happen. So tomorrow he will have 2 more opportunities.
Let's hope for good weather for tomorrow, not only for these drivers, but also as we bring you the final day of qualifying. Let's take a quick look as Dominic Dobson comes up to speed at what has happened here today. Ray Hall, the last of the 2nd day qualifiers in row 9, alongside John Andretti, having turned an impressive 221.7, and Robbie Gordon, a spectacular 220. Matsushita, Jones, and Brabham in the next row. Ribbs, Crawford, and Smith rounding out the qualified drivers at this moment. The gun has sounded. Sports Center is next. We'll stay with Dominic Dobson's run and see if he can get in on the show. The green flag flies for Dominic Dobson's final run of the day.
And this has been a story here. He has only had about 3 or 4 days practice in this car. It's one of the Galmer cars that Al Unser Jr. raced last year. He spun between the short chutes at 1 and 2 and didn't do any damage. But he has had this car above 218 miles an hour. Just like Willie T. Ribbs, Dominic Dobson better dig deep into the talent bag and try and drag out the Willie factor, which Derek Walker says is that extra 10%.
You're looking for his 6th start in the Indy 500, and Dobson Needing the critical effort now has got to be 2:16.7. This will be the final run of the day. The gun has sounded. The track closes immediately after the conclusion of this run. 2:17.633, good enough with a mile to spare.
Scott Pruitt is on the hot seat. 2:16.7 is Pruitt's time. 2:17.6 for Dominic Dobson. Scott Pruitt does have another car. He can make another attempt tomorrow. But Dominic Dobson, if he can string together 3 more laps, he will be in the field, and Scott Pruitt will be watching.
Scott Pruitt was a first-day qualifier. He elected to take that 2:16.7 on the first day. That made him the 15th qualifier. If he is bumped, everybody behind him moves up, and into the field would go Dominic Dobson.
Great second. Great second lap. Oh, he's high in the groove. Look at this. Out in the gray, drags it back into the racing line, giving it everything this car has. 218.9 miles an hour for lap 2. Almost 219 miles an hour. Faster than Dominic Dobson has ever gone here this month.
Boy, I'll tell you, this is an impressive performance. That Galmer is trying to jump out from under him at every turn of the racetrack. You are seeing desperation as he heads into the white flag lap. Dominic, you don't need quite that much. 2:18.9 is plenty safe. The next lap, 2:19.3. Faster with every lap. He's picked up almost 2 miles an hour. What a great driving effort by Dominic Dobson in a car that looks to me like it's fighting him.
And Bobby Rahal walks away because he knows he will not get a chance today. But as soon as Pruitt is knocked out, Bobby Rahal, believe it or not, is on the bubble. But Dominic Dobson is the man holding court, and all the eyes are on him. Can he make it? He has only 1 more corner to go here.
Stay tuned for Sports Center next. Derek Daly, our expert commentator. Our thanks to Jan Beekes and Dr. Jerry Punch trackside. He's in. Dominic Dobson makes the show. He has bumped Scott Pruitt, Bobby Rahal on the bubble. When we come back tomorrow to wrap up our qualifying efforts here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Rahal still smiling. He obviously thinks, hey, it's not going to rain tomorrow. I'm going to get another shot. What a dramatic conclusion here to day 3 of qualifying. The forecast tomorrow, an 80% chance of rain. Rahal and the rest will be back tomorrow to try to stay in the show. We'll join you at 4 o'clock local time, 5 o'clock Eastern time. Stay tuned for Sports Center next. What a dramatic day. There's more to come tomorrow from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Dave Despain. So long, everyone. If, like Nigel Mansell, driver of the famous Red 5, you are fortunate enough to already be qualified for the Indy 500, your concern is next weekend. On the other hand, if, like so many drivers, you were either trying to get in today or sitting there wondering if you were going to stay in, it was a very, very dramatic day at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I'm Dave Despain with Derek Daly, and we saw today everything we've come to expect from Bubble Day. We had the excitement of trying to get in, the tremendous sense of achievement balanced off against those huge disappointments that come when you're bumped.
That's absolutely right. It was a tremendous day. There is no doubt that racing programs can live or die by their success or failure at the Indianapolis 500. So just to qualify for this great event is considered a success.
And indeed, we had drivers who were qualified, then were bumped from the field today. It's all part of that intriguing 4-day process of qualifying for the 500. And for some big-name drivers, this month has been a real struggle. The struggles continued today, notably for Eddie Cheever. We'll pick up the tape with this morning's practice activity. And Cheever coming down the front straightaway when the cowl flew off the car.
And do not underestimate how potentially dangerous this could have been for Eddie Cheever. The last time I saw a cowl fly off a Penske like this, it was in '89. It was Danny Sullivan, and it happened going into turn 3. Danny had a huge crash and suffered a broken arm, which really he suffered from for the rest of the season after that.
Eddie Cheever at this point was not qualified. This man who sat on the front row. Flashes of being out very early in the qualifying today, and that's precisely what happened. But he was an apprehensive man, not at all satisfied with the way the car has been working this month.
He has had such a struggle all through this second week to try and get this Penske. Now remember, it's last year's Penske with the B version of the Chevrolet engine. They have worked extremely hard and got so close to the wall. Watch this here. See that? Black tire marks from the front wheels of Cheever's car rubs that Goodyear sign from the side of the tire against the wall. But Eddie Cheever is in a major struggle now to get back into this race.
He qualified on that run and was followed out by Jim Crawford. Yes, the same Jim Crawford, the same Scotsman who has so many times in Indianapolis been the headline story, the big speed guy who would run down below the white line with Buick power at some monstrous speeds. Crawford, too, has had a tough month of May.
He has had a tough month. One of the bravest men to ever come here to Indianapolis. We have seen him be spectacular and have enormous crashes in the past. Worked very, very hard to get this car to suit his driving style as opposed to Guerrero's driving style, which was the original setup they had on this car. But Crawford happily did get enough speed for 4 laps to get in this field.
He became the third qualifier of the day, Olivier Grouillard in between Cheever and Crawford, and that gave us 3 of the 7 drivers we were looking for. Jerry Punch talked about the engine problems that Crawford has suffered this month.
Yeah, unfortunately, they dropped the first one and it broke in an airport somewhere, so I had to send it all the way back to Texas to get some new bits put on it.
But you came out to qualify. Your first lap, not exactly as quick as the others. Did you have a problem?
Yeah, we'd made a little bit of an adjustment just before qualifying because we thought it was getting hotter and slippier, and we didn't really need to do that. So it took a couple of laps to figure out what the car was actually doing. Then it was okay.
Bad enough all the other things that can go wrong at Indy without having baggage handlers drop your engine and break it. Hiro Matsushita crashed here a year ago, broke his leg, came back rather valiantly this year, struggled a good bit during the month, but then when he found the speed, found it impressively.
And by the time this weekend came, it certainly looked as if Hiro would have to have a kamikaze effort to get this car in the race because he has struggled so badly to get the speed from this Walker Motorsports entry.
2:19 and change, actually 2:19.9 the speed for Matsushita that made him the 4th qualified driver of the day. Now, we came here looking for 7, and that means that we're very close to that magical moment when we start to bump drivers from the field. The intensity of this day just built all day long.
And that is when the pressure really begins to build, and of course it was on Mark Smith that the pressure was really going to come on when he eventually got bumped out of this race.
Smith had taken a 2:14 qualifying effort last week, wondering if it would hold up. It didn't, and we'll show you that and more when we return to Indianapolis Motor Speedway, day 3 of qualifying. Welcome back to Indianapolis Motor Speedway and our A.J. Foyt Memorial segment here. A.J. is no longer a race driver, but he was certainly part of the show today.
He makes headlines every single time he comes here for the Speedway. And it was John Andretti who was the recipient of some good fortune, courtesy of A.J. Foyt, this weekend because he drafted John Andretti into his 2-car team.
They have indeed 2 Foyt cars on the track, and it was they were the first to go out today after, 4.5 hours of waiting. They pulled into line, they being Robbie Gordon. Here, the first of the 2 cars to go out to qualify. The startling news is that they had not put enough fuel in the car. So he peeled off a 2:20 and then a 2:19, and then suddenly and dramatically began to slow. And A.J. was not happy to hear that news on the radio.
A.J. could hardly believe it that they made such a fundamental mistake. Look at Robbie Gordon. He is furious as he waves his fist. A.J. takes the headphones off, walks away, can hardly believe that they actually forgot to put enough fuel into this car during the qualifying run.
They had put enough fuel in to go out and make a couple of practice runs, and the cars were quickly at 2:18, 2:19, 2:20, and they said, okay, it's time to qualify. Well, they shook that off. John Andretti, the 3rd car he's driven this month, A.J.'s godson, climbed aboard and went out for his qualifying run. And I think it's intriguing that the focus of the team was not shaken at all. They immediately devoted their full attention to Andretti, and he really performed magnificently.
Well, there is no doubt John Andretti has become a crowd favorite here because he was so good to help Derek Walker out getting his cars up to speed, and yet he still stood around without a drive for himself to try and get into this great race. And of course, A.J. came to the rescue, and John Andretti was just spectacular on his first lap in particular, 223 miles an hour plus.
Only 3 cars had faster laps in qualifying all month than did John Andretti, who didn't know until this morning when he walked into the Foyt garage and saw his name on the car that he indeed had the ride. Ultimately, the qualifying average was 2:21. .746. John Andretti solidly in the field and happy to have the opportunity to talk to our Jerry Punch.
Well, I just can't say how much I appreciate, Derek Walker being able to help me out at the beginning. And then, AJ came along there, and it's sort of final hour. And this Copenhagen Ford is just great, and I had a lot of help this month and a lot of support this month. And, I hope that I can get back into Indy cars full time. But certainly I'm back in my 6,500 and a very good car, and I couldn't be any happier.
If he doesn't get back in a full-time IndyCar ride, he's going to make a heck of a drag racer. They've put fuel in Robbie Gordon's car now. They've all had their temper tantrums. Robbie threw a fit. AJ threw a fit. They fueled the car back up, went right back out right after Andretti, and ran his best laps perhaps of the month.
And Robbie Gordon knew he could do it. He did have a moment in one of his laps, I believe it was the third lap, but he has had this car above 222 miles an hour regularly during the last 2 weeks. So when it came to perform, Robbie Gordon was up to the task, and A.J. Foyt's car number 2, or number 1, whatever way you look at it, was solidly and safely in the field.
In previous efforts, when Gordon had developed that push, he brushed the wall. He hit it 3 times this month. When it counted, his laps were clean and green, and here's what he said.
We had a good set of tires the first time, and the guys ran me out of fuel. I guess a big miscalculation. We're trying to do too many things at one time.
What is it like driving for a legend, A.J. Foyt?
It's tough. He does know how to get around Indianapolis, and we do have good cars, but, I think we'll be okay. I think we just get everything mellowed out the next couple days, and we'll go and race the race next Sunday.
I'll bet driving for A.J. Foyt is tough, especially when you come back in after a bobble like that fuel problem.
I'm sure that Foyt sees a lot of himself in Robbie Gordon. Very talented, brash. I think he has that nice bit of arrogance that I believe you have to have, because that shows the confidence level I believe that Robbie Gordon has in himself. And I think A.J. Foyt's going to have a lot of enjoyment and fun bringing Robbie Gordon along on this learning curve.
First 535 years that has not featured A.J. as a driver, but he certainly promises lots of fireworks as a car owner. And so the 2 Foyt cars are in the show, and we'll be back to start bumping right after this. Robbie Gordon was the 32nd qualifier for the 33-car field. And you made the point in our earlier telecast that some very big names, notably Bobby Rahal, were white-knuckling a little bit today.
And I don't think Rahal even realized that he could get bumped out of this field, but suddenly in the last hour, cars came out and began to go consistently in the 216, 17 mile an hour range, and suddenly Rahal was in jeopardy of being out of this race.
The conditions were perfect late in the afternoon, and Davy Jones, whose month started with a crash, suddenly found himself with the gun at his head. Time to go to work here. 2 qualifying efforts behind him. This is his last opportunity to make this Indy 500, and he made the best of that opportunity.
Many all-nighters put in by this Euro Motorsport team to get this car back on the racetrack. The accident bill for the damage has been $245,000 to keep adding the right bits back onto this car after Davey hit the wall, once because of a driver mistake and the second time because of a major engine blow-up. But Davy Jones was consistently above 219 in practice, but could he do it in the race? Well, of course, the answer was yes. Or in qualifying, the answer, of course, was yes, he could.
$250,000 worth of damage is certainly a lot, but bear in mind it pays more than $100,000 to finish last in this race, and that was the spot that Jones was going for here. He was the 33rd qualifier of the day, coming in at 218.5 miles per hour. And when it was all done, it was a very relieved Davy Jones, even though he still faced the potential of the bubble.
It's been a long 2 weeks. The car is, it's an old car. It's a 92 with a Chevy A. We're down a little bit on horsepower, but every time, it could run a good 19 on a good lap, and every time things went for the positive side of us, some snake grabbed up and bit us. So it's just nice. This was our 3rd and final attempt for this car, and I hadn't been in it since this morning, so it was just kind of go out and do it, and it had a bit of push to it. There's a few moments, but I hung in there.
And with that, the field was full. 33 drivers qualified. Jeff Brabham went out now with the clear goal of being faster than Mark Smith, who had run only 2:14. And Brabham, your former teammate, had no problem coming home at 2:17.8 and putting the third Menard team car in the field. And afterward, he talked about it.
You know, we've had a tough day today. We came out this morning, ran 220 really easy, and then we blew the engine up. And the guys really did a fantastic job getting the engine back, but unfortunately, we didn't really run enough to, you know, really dial the car in for the conditions. So in my run, I had quite a bad push, which slowed me down. But, you know, we just wanted to get in the race, and I think that's what we've done. Now we can sort those problems out for the race.
So Brabham bumps Mark Smith. Perseverance is the key to being a good race driver, and Smith persevered.
Well, that's right. This was a pressure cooker situation for young rookie Mark Smith to come here to get bumped out of the race when he thought he had it handled, but to come back, practice another car, put it out on the racetrack, and do an exceptionally good job.
2:17.150 the speed. Mark Smith, the rookie, bumps Eddie Cheever from the field.
You know, we gave it everything we had when we ran those 214s in practice. We were doing 212s, but you know, you just mentally, you just try to get yourself focused to put it together and, you know, just hang it out and take some risks. I mean, you know, you got everything to gain and nothing to lose, so might as well stand on it.
And indeed, he did stand on it, put it in the show. After being bumped, he's back in the field. Cheever now is the man who will next come into the spotlight. Having had such an up-and-down month, he becomes the man who tries to bump back in.
It's hard to describe the feeling that drivers have when they sit on the pit wall and just watch themselves slowly get squeezed out of this race. It's almost a situation where you don't have control of your own destiny, which is an incredible frustration. However, Cheever did have a second car. It was in line, but at this stage, he didn't know whether it was going to be good enough or not.
Well, we'll find out whether or not it was good enough when we come back with more of our third day of qualifications for the Indy 500. We're coming to you from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You may be wondering about Willie Ribbs. Did he make the show this year? He of so much drama and excitement a couple of years ago when he became the first black driver ever to make the field. We'll find out as we move on here. To this point, we'd had a remarkably incident-free late qualifying session. Despite all the pressure, everybody was keeping it between the walls. That's about to change.
That is about to change, and fortunately enough, it wasn't to be a major crash, as we've seen many times here in the past, particularly when you push just that little bit too hard and the car gets away from you. This is Buddy Lazier. This is his own car, and look what happens here. Exiting turn 2, he makes an incredible amount of spins, actually spins it 3.5 times. And you can see in the slow-mo that when it gets away from him, exiting turn 2, he's a good 3 or 4 feet off the wall. That was what saved this car from being totally destroyed. You see it's backwards here, full 360, and just continues on. His dad was in the pit lane. His dad owns this car. And it was late on the racetrack. It only appeared in the second week. So they do have one more opportunity to get Buddy Lazier up to speed. He did do a 219-mile-an-hour lap time on Friday evening.
Willie T. Ribbs next up. Boy, has he had a tough time getting that car up to speed. He's had help from John Andretti. Still couldn't quite muster the speed that he needed. But when it counted, Ribbs turned his fastest 4 laps of the month. That is pressure performance.
When you need to dig a little bit deeper down into the talent bag, you have to be able to grab something substantial and produce it if you're chasing a critical 2 or 3 miles an hour, which Willie T. Ribbs was. He did not have this car up to speed, but during his qualifying run, he did produce that extra piece of driver magic that you have to be able to draw upon sometimes.
And it wasn't an erratic effort either. He clicked off consecutive laps at 2:17.9, 2:17.8, and 2:17.8. The average was 2:17.7, and that was good enough to bump Olivier Grouillard from the field. Derek Walker, who's had a very, very busy month, talked about it.
Well, we call it the Willie factor. You know, it's that last 10% that we rely on drivers doing, but it'll be close. It's a good speed, but having been here before, I'm not leaving anything to chance.
I was here in 91, and it was great to qualify, and this year is just as great. We've been struggling all month. A lot of people have accused me of sandbagging, like 91, just going easy and then standing on it, but we weren't sandbagging. It was a real guess here because we didn't know what the car was going to do. It was loose. I'm on my last run, and you know, Steve Erickson and Dr. Tim Wardrop and John Miller dialed some some wing into it, and we said, let's go do it.
So Ribbs is in, Gouillard is out, and Eddie Cheever is back on the racetrack. He who really wanted to go play golf today.
And this run became almost a scary bit of the day because Cheever began to use all the racetrack that was available and then go outside the groove into the grade, trying to squeeze more power out of this car. But it wasn't enough, and Norm Turley, his team owner, waved the yellow flag and said, we have to wait for Sunday if we're going to have a chance to get back in this race.
I was glad to see that yellow before he hit the fence. Dominic Dobson becomes the last qualifier of the day. Got out with 2 minutes to spare, and with Scott Pruitt on the bubble, the chassis that won the race a year ago, and this was another clutch performance.
Absolutely. This car also only appeared on Wednesday of this week. That was the second week of practice. This is the often criticized Galmer chassis that Dominic Dobson jumped into. So this car isn't too bad at all. He was immediately up to 218 in practice and went even faster during his tremendous qualifying run.
Dominic Dobson thus bumps Scott Pruitt from the field with a lap or an average for 4 laps of 218.776 miles per hour. Eddie Cheever, last year a front row starter, is bumped from the field and will hope to get back tomorrow. Scott Pruitt looks a lot happier than one might expect from someone who has just been unceremoniously booted out of the Indy 500. And tomorrow is very much a question mark.
Well, that smile of Scott Pruitt's might have been a little bit forced, because when you get bumped out of this race, you go home and have to scratch your head because you do not know whether his spare car, and he does have another car, he does not yet know whether that car is fast enough to get him safely back into this race.
I would suspect that the Cheevers and Pruitts of the world will be watching the weather forecast very closely this evening. An 80% chance of rain. If it washes out, they simply don't make the big show. So they'll be hoping for the opportunity to come back tomorrow, the 4th and final day of qualifying, and put it in the field. I would suspect some sleepless nights tonight for some people.
Absolutely. And remember, they will be back in Gasoline Alley just going over these race cars with fine-tooth combs, hoping they can find something that may have been wrong, hoping to fine-tune them and squeeze. Remember, 1 mile an hour is all they need. That is only less than half a second on 4 laps. That is a phenomenally small amount, but that's how close it gets here.
And the one man that we ought to mention is the man on the bubble, if indeed they begin to run tomorrow. The national champion, Bobby Rahal, is now the man in danger of being bumped from the Indy 500 field. We'll be back to look at the lineup in a moment. We're back at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We're less than 7 miles an hour bracket the 33 cars that have qualified for the field. We want to run quickly down through the lineup. Not a lot of changes up at the front of the field, but wholesale changes after today. Lyondike, Andretti, and Boiselle. Quite a front row for next Sunday's big race.
Scott Goodyear, Al Unser Jr., remember they battled last year, and Stefan Johansson on the outside.
In row 3, we'll find the Tracy and Fittipaldi entries from the Penske stable, bracketing Nigel Mansell.
Row 4, Guerrero, Scott Brayton, and Danny Sullivan.
The first major change today came in row 5. The bumping of Scott Pruitt moves Stefan Gregoire up to the outside of row 5, along with Piquet and Kogan.
Moving back to row 6, Jeff Andretti, Teo Fabi, who's delighted to be up that high, and of course Gary Bettenhausen in the Buick.
All these drivers moving up a spot with the bumps. Vassar, Fox, and Lynn St. James will start from row 7.
Row 8, Tony Bettenhausen, Al Unser Sr., and the national champion, long way back, Bobby Rahal.
Rahal at 2:17.140. That is the bump speed for tomorrow. In row 9, after today's activities, John Andretti and Robbie Gordon in the 2 A.J. Foyt cars and Hiro Matsushita outside.
And then row 10, Dominic Dobson, tremendous performance today, alongside Davy Jones, another good run, and Jeff Brabham on the outside.
And digging down deep to pull it out when he needed it, Willie T. Ribbs. And the same is true of Mark Smith. They will bracket Jim Crawford in the 11th and final row. And in the short time that remains, perhaps you can give us a sense of what Bobby Rahal's options are that he has to think about tonight as the man on the bubble tomorrow morning.
Well, he does have another car that is fast enough. But does he go and run that car and withdraw the one that's already in the field? I don't think so. That's too risky. But if he gets bumped out, he has to make sure that he is not too far behind in the lineup, that he does get another chance to put his other car back in again. So Rahal,
a most unusual situation for a national champion.
And this could all be determined. The strategies could all be shaken up by the weather tomorrow. An 80% chance of rain. We certainly hope you've enjoyed ESPN's coverage of the third day of qualifying. We'll be back with more tomorrow at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. Dave Despain for Derek Daly. Thank you for joining us, and so long from Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Another week of practice and another day of qualifying has come and gone at Indianapolis. Now only one more day of time trials remain. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Speed Week. I'm Bob Jenkins. Just 6 more hours of qualifying remain tomorrow when the field will be set for this year's Indy 500. Now, before we get a report on today's activity, let's quickly review what's happened since we talked with you last. 11 cars qualified Sunday to expand the field to 26. The fastest 4-lap average was recorded by rookie Stefan Gregoire in Dick Simon's 1992 Lola Buick. 92 Indy 500 Rookie of the Year Len St. James made the field in one of Simon's Lola Fords. Meanwhile, Al Unser, the only active 4-time winner of the race, qualified for his 27th Indy 500. Bobby Rahall's 4-lap average of 217.140 in the Rahal-Hogan Chevy V8 was the third slowest in the field.
I'm not trying to put it on you, but you guys decide. We can work with it all day.
Take it, take it.
Take it.
And Bobby Rahal has become our 21st qualifier.
The first day of practice after the first weekend of qualifying is always a slow one. This year, no exception. John Andretti test-hopped the car assigned as Hiro Matsushita and recorded the day's top speed of 220.157. 2 crashes on Wednesday. Eric Bachelart in the Marmon Wasp 2. No injury, but the car was destroyed. Less than 30 minutes later, his Dale Coyne teammate Robbie Buell crashed for the second time this month, just after being medically cleared from the first crash. He was also uninjured, but it was a nightmare for the Coyne team. On Thursday, Mario Andretti turned the fastest lap of the month, 227.228, under ideal weather conditions in his backup car. 2 Winston Cup regulars visited before traveling to the Winston in Charlotte, Davey Allison and Kyle Petty. On Friday, John Andretti was in another car, this one from the A.J. Foyt stable. Now with an update on today's qualifying, here's Gary Lee.
One of the biggest stories of the weekend comes from the A.J. Foyt stable. It was just 1 week ago that Supertex announced his retirement to devote more time to his young protege, Robbie Gordon. But late yesterday afternoon, he added another driver, his godchild, John Andretti. Andretti waited until almost 5 o'clock, and despite few practice laps, put together the fastest run of the day with a 4-lap average of 221.746. AJ's other driver, Robbie Gordon, who had waved off an earlier run because of running out of fuel, was out next. He put his Lola Ford safely in the show at 220.085. Davy Jones then went out for his final attempt and filled the field with his speed of 218.6. Then the bumping began, and with a strong threat of showers on Sunday, the anxiety of not making the show was evident. Jeff Brabham put his Menard Lola Buick in the race and rookie Mark Smith on the sideline, but not for long. Mark was next out to qualify, and he bumped veteran Eddie Cheever, who had qualified earlier. And then Willie T. Ribbs delighted the crowd once again by qualifying for his second Indy 500, bumping Frenchman Olivier Grouillard. No one was happier than Trans Am champion Jack Baldwin. He was there to see his friend qualify. Just before the 6 o'clock gun, Dominic Dobson began his attempt. He surprised everyone by posting a 4-lap average of 218.7, the fastest he'd gone all month. As a result, Scott Pruitt was bumped, leaving 86 500 champion Bobby Rahal on the bubble. With only 1 day of qualifying remaining, weather permitting, here's how they're lined up for the 77th running of the Indy 500. In row 1, Ari Lyondike, Mario Andretti, and Raul Boisel. Row 2, Scott Goodyear, Al Unser Jr., and Stefan Johansson. Row 3, Paul Tracy, Nigel Mansell, and Emerson Fittipaldi. Row 4, Roberto Guerrero, Scott Brayton, and Danny Sullivan. Row 5, Nelson Piquet, Kevin Kogan, and Stefan Gregoire. Row 6, Jeff Andretti, Teo Fabi, Gary Bettenhausen. Row 7, Jimmy Vasser, Stan Fox, Lynn St. James. Row 8, Tony Bettenhausen, Al Unser Sr., Bobby Rahal. Row 9, John Andretti, Robbie Gordon, Hiro Matasushita. Row 10, Dominic Dobson, Davy Jones, Jeff Brabham. Row 11, Willie T. Ribbs, Jim Crawford, and Mark Smith. Don't forget ESPN coverage of the final day of qualifying, Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. For Speed Week, I'm Gary Lee.
Speed Week is brought to you by Quaker State. The Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Smooth Bush Beer and Easy Drinking Bush Light.
Coming up, the pole sitter for the 1993 Indy 500, Ari Luyendyk, joins us in studio. And a behind-the-scenes look at the busiest man at Indy.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What's happening, Carl? These are my neighbors here. I'm a coffee addict, yeah.
Ari Luyendyk made his first appearance at the Brickyard in 1985. He was also involved in other types of racing, competing in the IROC Series and IMSA, winning Sebring in 1989. Every driver's dream is to win Indy, and Luyendyk achieved that dream in 1990, winning his first ever IndyCar event in racing's greatest spectacle. His face is now permanently embossed on the prestigious Borg-Warner Trophy. Luyendyks' movie star looks landed him in People magazine's top 50 most beautiful people in the world last year. And he's a curator of art, owning his own gallery in Indianapolis. One of the sport's most outgoing personalities, he stars at his own TV commercials for Target department stores and works for a local ABC affiliate during the entire month of May. And now, he's the pole sitter for the 1993 Indy 500. 53 different drivers have won the Indianapolis 500. 52 different drivers have been its pole sitter. Ari Luyendyk became the 52nd last Saturday afternoon in a last-hour qualification run that knocked Mario Andretti off the pole. And Ari has joined us here in studio. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Now, as far as I can tell, you are the only pole sitter in history to wave off an attempt and then come back and take the pole. Now, your lap during that wave-off attempt was very slow. Were you waiting for cooler conditions, or did you have a problem with the car?
Well, we had a setup problem with the car Friday afternoon, and then when we came back Saturday morning for that 1 hour practice, we really couldn't improve on the car. You know, we were kind of stuck at 222. And we just made a decision to put something on the car that we didn't really know if it would work or not, and try it in that first qualification run. And if it didn't work, no big deal, because you know you can take advantage of the situation at Indy where you know qualifying stops, and then you can go out and practice and try something else, and then come back later in the afternoon, providing the weather is okay, and the weather was fine. So it wasn't really a big deal. It was a slow lap, but I just tried it out. It didn't work, and I just pulled it in and just went to work with the team.
There have been lots of comments during this past month about the removal of the apron and the fact that the groove is narrower than it used to be. We don't know how that's going to work on race day yet. What's your opinion?
Well, I have a feeling of how it's going to work. It's going to be very difficult for the drivers because before, with the apron being there, 15 feet more track, you know, you were able to drop your nose down on the inside of another car and get some air on the front wings. Well, you can't drop it down anymore because everybody's down at the lowest point of the track. You can't really put it up high because you run out of room coming out of the corner. So whoever gets his car to work best in traffic behind other cars will be very strong on race day.
But couldn't that make for a really good race because you're bunching up in the turns and then passing on the straightaway?
Not really, because when you bunch up behind another driver, you still have to back off the throttle, and he's actually on the throttle sooner than you are coming onto the straight. So you really can't just pull by him on the straightaway unless you have 50 horsepower more, but we don't have that advantage. You know, all the cars are quite equal, so it's going to be real tough to pass, and I think all the drivers have to be very patient to do so.
Back in 1990 when you won, your car owner, Doug Shearson, was very, very confident in the morning of the race that you were going to win. Is there that confidence in the Chip Ganassi team this year that you're going to do it again?
Well, we're very confident. I mean, I'm really proud of the guys that they came through the way they did on Saturday because, you know, obviously, you know, I can say now that we were just trying this setup and this and that, but we were working very hard to get the car to work. And I have to credit Morris Nunn and the team for making it work for me, and I have to tap myself a little bit on the shoulder because I got a little bit more out of the car than in the practice I just did prior to the qualifying run. But you know, in qualifying, that's when it counts, and that's when you get a little bit more out of the car. But we're very confident. We had a good full tank run, and we had some good runs this week. And right now, the guys are dismantling and putting back together the car and making it ready for carburation day.
Now, besides looking forward to a week from tomorrow in the 500-mile race, you've got something to look forward to in a few months with twins on the way, is that right?
That's right. Mika is pregnant, and we're expecting identical twins. And so we've been kind of getting things ready at the house and also thinking about some names.
We saw you in that Target commercial. You like to do that kind of thing?
The remote control stuff?
Yeah.
Well, my son has a few of those, and we always play around with them in the street.
Thanks for being here, and good luck on race day. You know, we're doing a live call-in show the day after the race, so maybe you'll be right here and we can do it again.
Well, just like last time, you know, if I win the race, I'm pretty flexible.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Ari Lyondike, the pole sitter for this year's Indianapolis 500. Now, most Indy 500 winners have come from the pole position. 14 have taken the checkered flag after starting from the number 1 spot. But did you know no one has won from the second starting position since Mario Andretti in 1969? That's where he's starting in this year's race. Perhaps the busiest car owner at Indy this year is Dick Simon. He entered 5 cars for this year's race. Trying to run the team, keep sponsors happy, and school his drivers is no minor task. We accompanied Dick during one of his typical easy days.
Usually get up at about 5 and go to bed about 12:31. And it works out great. I've been doing it for years. 70 is my first year here at Indianapolis. And we've been in these 4 garages ever since they built the garages. Prior to that, when the garages were this way, we were at this end also. So there's something about this corner that we must love. But everybody goes by here, everybody. So you get a chance to talk to the media without chasing them down because you see them come by. And you get a chance to talk to people that maybe you spot along the way. Good, you? What's happening, Carl? These are my neighbors here. I'm a coffee addict, yeah. You know why? It's something for me to keep from getting nervous. I always wanted to be a hands-on person, and if somebody else owns it, you have to be a little careful about that. And I enjoy being an owner. At least you can somewhat control some of your destiny. What are we doing now? What are we going out to learn now? What is your plan now? Do you realize how much that's costing us to run around here and how much risk? We are risking a qualified front row car to test telemetry.
He's a great guy because he's going to give me a brand new set of tires and we're going to run at 5:30 today.
He wants to be fast time again. I think that when people are looking for a team to go with and they feel like they want some security, that's something they can sell to the sponsor, the fact that our team has never missed making the race. And I think that's important, particularly when people are putting up dollars. Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Do we put Terrell Palmer up in a 215, 214 car? And have him maybe barely make the race or get bumped? Or do we try to put him in the Ford, which is what I would like to do, but we're waiting on the answer from Ford. Contracts come right out here, and we take them out, wine them, dine them in the hospitality area, or take them up to the suite. Have you ever been up to our suite? Well, we're on our way to the suite. See you, folks. Thank you. Come on in. When I first came to Indy in 1970, First of America turned me down on a credit card. And today they own everything we have. Even when we come up to the suite, I have to make phone calls. This thing's earning its way into my ear, I think. I don't have to exercise. There's Lynn. Well, I'm calling it a day. Kind of slow day today, though. That was good. I had a chance to relax a little bit, meet a lot of people, say hi to everybody, and I'm just going to go home now and find something to eat, get up again about 4:30, and get started again tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.
Not bad for a 59-year-old man, huh? Dick has never won a race as a driver. Perhaps this year will be his best chance to win as an owner, with Raul Boisel starting on the outside of the front row.
Speed Week has been brought to you by Suzuki. Your Suzuki motorcycle dealer has the ride you've been waiting for and the financing to get it.
Here are some qualifying results from this weekend, beginning with the Formula One race tomorrow in Monaco. Also, the World of Outlaws continued their trek across the U.S. Last night, they were in Attica, Ohio, and here's a look at how they finished. One of the missing faces in this year's Indy 500 lineup is four-time winner Rick Mears. This will be the first time since 1978 that Rick has not driven at the Brickyard.
And as far as tonight goes, I'm officially retired.
That's how it all started. December 10th, 1992, when Rick made the surprise announcement. This year, Rick has been a consultant to Penske Racing, helping Paul Tracy find speed for the upcoming 500. And earlier in the week, his friends and colleagues arranged a surprise roast for the retired Rocket. He received a few gifts.
It's perfect.
And some ribbing from his fellow competitors.
Last year in New Hampshire, tried to see if I could get a rise out of him, and I put him in the wall. And so later on, I go over to they have the medical center, and he's getting his wrist checked over by Dr. Trammell, and I went in there and I gave him the usual cockamamie story, like he was on the blind side of my mirror and this and that, and Rick says, no problem. He says, I shouldn't have been there. He goes, what do you have to do to this guy?
As your teammate, I hated your damn guts. I am keeping this list. And paybacks are a bitch. So, that's all I want to say. Thank you very much. Thanks again for everything. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Rick, I was on my way back from the NASCAR race in California last Sunday night and couldn't attend, but the Speed Week gang would like to add our own 2 cents worth. Now, as we were looking through our library, we found this picture to help remind you of how much you've changed through the years. But we salute you for being a great champion. And that will do it for another edition of Speed Week. We'll see you next Saturday night at 7:30 Eastern Time for a roundtable discussion of the next day's Indy 500. And we leave you tonight with more of the lighter moments from the Rick Mears roast. So long, everyone.
Our first date, what a scene. You took me to a bar, we drove into the lot, and you hit a parked car. That's true.
Something's missing there. It has the sofa, the cooler, and where's all the money?
You know when you're retired, when you don't have to go 200 miles per hour, you can grow a beard, and you can still collect a check from Roger Penske.